to absolutely confuse people. Oh no, no picture. Live-ish, ish, yeah. Well, moving, functional. Well, I won't say functional, but I have coffee. That'll do.
You can't hear me. There we go. Hello! I forgot to
Ah,
unmute myself. Look at that. Look, professional and everything.
that's what
Oh,
we're calling ourselves now, is it?
I think so. Jesus Christ. It's, yeah. Oh, great. What a way to start.
Yeah, it's a good start. And half the fun is, for the last half hour, we've been starting to have a conversation about stuff and then stopping ourselves and going, no, save it for the stream,
Yeah.
save it for the stream. And then the minute we've got here, we've both gone, mind blank.
Yeah. So basically, we've been looking at the. Hi, Logan. We've been looking at the new player's handbook and all the rest of it, and
Yeah.
it's that whole wanting to talk without.
Yeah.
and going. "Ah!"
It's a thing, it's a thing. Yeah, so I mean, I got it literally yesterday, day before? No, yesterday, it was yesterday, because I happened to look at the app. And as these things do, it says, "Oh, by the way, we're doing 40% off on some stuff." And well, it was rude not to, really, because it suddenly made the book go from, "Oh God, that's an expensive luxury," to, you know what, I can actually pick that up. So £25 later, or when it was £24.99, that's in there, and I've shared it across to the group, because I've got the Master
Yeah.
Tool and D&D Beyond. And initial response looking at it is it's actually really friendly.
Yeah, it's definitely beginner friendly.
Yeah.
That's what I like so far. Is it's very beginner friendly.
It's I've made 2 characters with it just to sort of just to play around, and each have not come out the way I thought they would in terms of any initial idea, but actually it was really good, because it's a case of, well, I've sort of got this idea, but actually then as the options rolled out,
Yeah.
and because they've kind of topsy-turvied it a bit, where you're thinking about how you look and how you sort of want to present, what you want to be, and then you're starting to fill things out, it kind of felt a bit more organic in some ways. You don't need to have the information to do a build.
Yeah.
It's more, what's the player, what's the character you
What's
want
the
to be?
player looking at? And
Like I said, I hasten to say I am not switching to use the 24 in the current game, because we're all used to using what's now being called Legacy, i.e. the normal rules, and I don't want to change mechanics halfway through.
yeah, exactly. I think it's anything with D&D. You end up sort of over time integrating all the ones you know, and D&D just becomes a homebrew anyway once you get going, no matter what you do, because it's like one person might run say potions as an action, whereas I run them as a bonus action. I think you now run them as a bonus action in the game.
Yeah.
So it's it's one of those things that like some people run
That evolves. That's evolved through social media, through just how it's been sort of done as a house rules and things like that. Well, and it's that sort of that ongoing influence of live streams where people have been doing it, and it sort of kind of gets picked up. And if there's nothing else that is a demonstration of how games evolve and pick up bits and pieces, sort of like the English language mugging other languages for sort of pocket change and grammar,
it's
and
the fat pocket change.
Yeah,
it's great.
My take on it has always been, with every new version of D&D or every revision, is to mentally treat them as different games.
Yeah.
Because there's something. I mean, and by this I'm talking the major revisions. I mean, if you were to go with every single version, I think there's easily over a dozen versions.
Oh God, yeah.
Dragons. If you're going all the way back through chainmail and basic and
if you start from the beginning, or you think the original D&D wasn't even a real rule book as such. It was just what Gygax went, this is what we use. Good luck.
Yeah, give it a go, see what happens. And that was the whole beef. oh god, massively oversimplified between some of the approach of Gygax and Arneson.
Yeah.
But but I'm not going to go into that because my brain will weep. But for example, looking at the version of going from basic into advanced, from advanced into second edition advanced, which was kind of, it feels kind of a lot of the difference of where we are now with this shift from 5 to whatever they're calling, basically by the year.
Yeah.
Sort of how we had 3 and 3.5.
Mm-hmm.
There's these kind of half steps that kind of are kind of based on errata and changing.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of so much has been gone. Oh, this works better as a blah blah blah.
Yeah,
we've done so much of this. We now need to rewrite. We now need to release an updated rulebook.
Yeah, or we're just going to rationalise it this way, or the sort of it's things like action economy. It's where you get with 5th edition legendary actions as basically kind of superpowered reactions that refresh. And the only reason those are being brought in is action economy.
Mm-hmm.
So the big bosses don't get splatted within a round and a half without really sort of doing much more than standing there, giving a monologue, and then sort of going, "Oh, yeah, where's my leg gone?" You know.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's
very video game.
Yeah, and I also run sort of like a version of that in my games that I call movie moments.
Yeah,
where once per level you get something huge has gone wrong, and you get to roll a d20, 15 and up. There's no modifiers. 15 and up. You get to describe your movie moment.
Okay.
So, like, they're all like, you're a paladin. They're all on the brink of death, and there's a big bad firing something at you, and you say right, I'm gonna slam down my shield and just like protect them as best as I can, and then I'll come in with, as you slam down your shield, radiant energy emanates from the shield and protects all of you. You know, except make it epic. You know, rather than just being help, it suddenly becomes epic, and then you can go into, as you feel the radiant energy, you start stepping forward, countering this enemy's breath weapon, and really lay into it, because it just adds to that sort of that feeling of they're really doing something that like is totally against the odds. But then you go the other way and you go like the BB, or this, not BBEG, but this creature lambasts your party with X amount of damage and blah 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 blah, and your party is down. All your party is down. But the enemy will not do that final blow.
Yeah.
And just turns to you and says, "When you are stronger, come and find me," and walks off. And just watching people go, "What?" is my favourite thing.
Okay, yeah, I can see the appeal.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely something I let into, definitely more with the kids.
Yeah.
To get that fear that they were going to die, that they were going to, that there was huge stakes, because kids don't tend to visualize quite as much as what adults do. So leaning into that was really nice, and just watching them go, "What? We're not dead?" You go,
I mean, it reminds me a bit of the. I suppose my thing is I just have the little mental contingencies. Because, as I have said many times, I am not trying to kill you all. Sometimes you make it really hard not to.
Yeah.
And in which case that's sometimes just a case of, well, let's just let the dice fall where they are. And so far, you guys have managed to pull your asses out of the fire.
Yeah.
It's been close on more than one occasion.
Oh God, yeah. Oh, hold on. Oh, give me a second, people.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
my food.
That's your food arriving. Fair enough. I shall natter away then while I have the floor. So a good example of this in the recent D&D game. So I'm just going to bring the Twitch channel up so I can see anyone talking. Yeah, very much Big Bad does a monologue and Thorin cleaves him in half. Is when we've been looking at the Ilmarrow stuff that we've been doing in the main game. My main game, not anyway. Before I get confused, as the party decided for the first time, really, to go splat and just separate, go to the Four Winds, and it was that sort of, oh god, how am I going to track you all down? And one of the options I was looking at was, okay, well, I can make a map that has about 4 or 5 different locations on it, and then run all the fights you manage to get into as one big fight, separating them all out, which would have been epic, but the decisions you made sort of quickly veered that away into a, no, we'll do this encounter, then leading on to you joining up the next bunch, and then the next bunch is sort of rolling it all back together. So it felt a bit more sort of you all sort of finding your own way back again. But the other extreme was, if you did all come a cropper, was to do the old favourite of, you've all been captured and you all wake up in a prison in prison cells, and I had maps prepared for you doing your own jailbreak and making a break for it on that front. But that's sort of that's more kind of the way that I operate, and I run the kind of the what ifs of, you know, trying to double guess which way the party's going to sort of go flying off in random directions. Whereas what Leah's been describing there with the movie moments, I like the agency that it gives both sides in terms of stepping back because being DMs, there are times where we just totally miscalculate the difficulties, or the dice just aren't friendly, or someone just sort of doesn't hear something properly and comes up with some incredible spell that nearly wipes out half the party, looking at Kerner, and having that option to then sort of go and sort of pull the fat from the fire by sort of saying, no, you're not good enough, I'm going to run away. Not run away, I'm going to walk off. I like the style of that, and just as a sort of thing from the other way round. We have shades of that in the D&D game, where someone will pull something out of the hat, and this is kind of where I've stolen that whole conceit from the Critical Role of how do you want to do it. Gives you a chance to sort of have that sort of bit more of a bit of a show off, and sometimes in the way that you guys play, it's just that no whistles, no bells. I'm just gonna sort of just no fuss, arrow straight in the head, or as Thorin has said, cleave them in half a bit more, keep cleaving, you know, like the gibbering mouther that sort of I described as peeling apart like spam. I like to call it our respective imaginations working together.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of some of the great fun of D&D and other roleplay games, where you give each other a chance to, as you said, to not be running things as written, without going full rule of cool, which I've got no problem with rule of cool, but I think I quite often hear it used in a derogatory way.
Definitely.
And so I tend to shy away from that as a thing.
I've
So I've just seen Bunny saying, "Never said I'd fight in a fancy way. Just bait shit." Says the cat, who we had a whole long section of fighting in sort of along the lines of WWE, so...
which was absolutely brilliant. And that's the thing. It's also that sort of downtime extra sort of. Oh, sorry, this chair is. There we go.
It's creaking more than my shoulder. That's quite impressive.
Yeah. So it's that it's that whole creating the mythos behind a character that you're playing, but also whether or not they're someone that will do flourishes, like say Kerner and Hope will almost always flourish with what they're doing.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it's that magic side of things. Whereas people like Foreign and Valenia are very much, it's dead. Where's the next one?
Yeah.
And it's working with that is nice. Just to...
I've always seen Thorin as the type to be doing the walking away from the explosion.
As the explosion goes off, there's Foreign. It's
Yeah.
the entire backside of him just burnt.
Yeah, he only has front armor now, not back armor. But it looked damn impressive. Oh, there's a frightening image.
Foreign in like a hospital gown.
Oh no! oh no! One of the things I was talking about while you were getting your delivery was how it kind of segues, how it manifests in when I'm running the game, of the number of contingencies that I do in terms of. I mean, the blog I wrote yesterday, 2 days ago, about unused, what I call unused scenarios, but are, for example, when the party split up as you got to Ilmarrow, the kind of the two different ways. One was I had a series of maps of, here are 4 different locations, so whatever you get into, I can throw you into these, and then run it all as one big fight across 4 locations.
Yeah.
Which I do want to try and do at some point, because just the idea of it sounds really cool. You can all see each other, you're all on the same screen, but you're actually all separated.
Yeah, it's that...
The tactical side of it amuses me.
And making people think outside the box. It's it's that making people think outside the box, not knowing what other people are going through, so you've got no urgency for other people.
Yeah.
Like,
whereas if you've got this sort of in the round, sort of everyone sees what's going on, and you can't interfere, you can't intervene, and technically you can't communicate unless you've got something already set up in the background, like sending stones or various other campaigns with other options on there. It just forces a very different type of interaction with the screen. I also then had the thing of, well, if they all sort of, it all goes horribly wrong and you all get sort of knocked out, taken out, whatever, then here's a prison break, a prison escape thing, and I had the map which I shared and put online at various places of this kind of large place with several cells around it, and how would you break your way out? Or if someone else had been captured, had kind of a more, rather than being at a temple, a more prosaic example of a watch house and prison and various places within that map that could be used to have someone kind of in the stocks or whatever.
Yeah.
You to sort of, however you as a group of people wanted to approach it, I could tweak that map.
To
run a scenario.
I've got loads and loads of backup maps. Like, literally, I've got an entire folder that is just backup maps, just in case that I go, right, I'm going to make this map. I don't know what I'm going to use it for.
Yeah.
But it's there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very much what I do.
And then all of a sudden, there'll be something I go, fuck, upload this quick. and you're
I did that the other day, didn't I?
And you're in the background of Roll20 while they're all role playing, and you're like just copying everything across. Don't mind me.
Do the thing, roll the script, extract from that, put that across there, copy that into the thing, hit the what's name, let the API do its thing. Hi, look what I've just pulled out of thin air. Honest.
And it's one of those things that you can really sort of get behind. You can try and be prepared for any scenario. Try.
You can try.
But, and I mean this in the best possible way. All of my players, if they're watching, all of my co-players, players happen.
Yep.
It's that no matter what happens, someone is always going to take it off script, and
Yeah.
well, not even off, because I don't tend to run. I have a beginning, a middle, an end.
Yeah. Yeah, very similar here as well.
Where you go along that line, it doesn't really matter. You know, as long as you don't suddenly start overtaking kingdoms for no reason other than I felt like it.
Okay, what's your favourite derail that you've had recently? That's actually changed the direction of what people are doing.
Oh, my lot adopting Creepy Keith.
Go on. There might be. Well, I mean, I'm usually out when you're running your game, so I have heard, to paraphrase, only the memes.
So, Creepy Keith was meant to literally just be a side character.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so Creepy Keith and some people know Gearstock, the time-traveling gnome, who was meant to be just a drunk gnome.
Okay.
And they made up this entire mythos about him.
I like it.
And
it sort of sounds similar to the way people have been evolving the story of Odif and Tanglefinger.
Yeah. So,
Anyway,
Keith was meant to be just a side character. No real overarching, and now he's just sort of like accompanied them. And at the next big thing, they don't know this yet, so this is going to be massive spoilers. He's going to have opened up his own bar.
You heard it here, folks.
In where they are now, and there's going to be all sorts of things around that, and there's like the fact that the biggest derail was the fact that there was supposed to be a load of gods kidnapped, held, have their power drained to enhance this new dragon god that is being made.
Okay.
It just so happens that one of the characters looks a little bit like one of the gods.
Right.
In the fact that of racist ways of looking at it, he has black feathers and a beak.
Okay.
The god in question just has black feathers. So these people, not being intelligent, seen a god talking to this character with feathers, and I rolled all this myself, and I was rolling it, and I was thinking this person's just gonna wander off and not worry about it. No, Moon as Ku decides, yes, I am the god.
Okay.
And instead of this dragon now being empowered, Ku is now imprisoned.
Right.
And it was just like, it was something I didn't plan for in the slightest. And because they imprisoned the wrong person, it then dropped the glamour that was over the entire town.
Right. Okay.
It was all this was right on the spot, and I was just like, ah! And it just went on and on and on, and they derailed by the biggest derail was the fact that they managed to bluff their way into the hideout,
Right.
and break up a marriage and an affair at the same time.
That's quite impressive. Yeah. Okay.
I'm just like, you know what? Well done. Well done.
Roll with it. Yeah.
And a couple of days later, there was supposed to be like this murderous sort of robot gem creature type thing that this evil scientist was basically this evil scientist that is behind a lot of the stuff at the moment is basically merging creatures together.
Okay.
Whether that be fae, folk, and dragons, you name it. He's just like, fuck it, let's do a thing, see what happens. And instead of attacking this creature that was in the basement, they made friends with it.
That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, weird that.
I have a lot of
I'll give you
a lot of that going on.
I'll give you one guess who it was.
Oh, let me think. Chloe.
And it was that very much like, you know what? And by the time they got back out of this dungeon or cellar, I was just like, right, okay, fuck it. Rewrite the next part of the adventure because this has completely gone off where I was going with this.
Yeah, that's yeah, I like that. That's not bad.
And I literally had to redirect everything because it was just like, oh fuck, because I was just like, what am I gonna do? So I literally just went, and I think luckily it was when Chloe gave birth, so I had a couple of weeks just to be able to
get your head around it.
And
yeah,
then
that could be a real worry between sessions, actually, especially if you've sort of done we're ending on a cliffhanger, and sometimes that's code for I haven't worked out what I'm going to do next, or I'm slightly scared, or
it's
I just need to mourn the old plans just for 30 seconds, you know.
Luckily, I've managed to sort of put those plans into a different place, not necessarily where they were, but further down the line, and just tweak it a little bit more. And and like the because basically when I was running the kids D&D game, a lot of the plot points from that are now in this game.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I was running them back to back, like you're doing with the other game as well.
Yeah.
You know, what one party was doing would then affect. You know, they were on completely different continents, so nobody knew what was going on. But because they've now worked their way back to where the kids D&D was happening, I can now push into that and go, right. And as someone that hates body horror and that sort of thing, this campaign is all about body horror. And I don't know how I've done it.
Yeah. I think it's always weird when themes emerge, and it's not been with any intention. It's been that sort of, well, we're going with here, and you know, it's like mine has been. It's kind of evolved into what's the nature of stories, and kind of and sort of there's elements there of playing with sort of the kind of the themes that Terry Pratchett, narrativium, and the nature of stories, and how much you're controlled by it, and how much you control it, and how much you can leverage your understanding of what the story is, and that's kind of been a constant all the way through. But I'd asked you, and while you were answering, I was also thinking about what my favourite derailment has been, and I think it has to be that you all kidnapped yourselves.
Yeah.
You had a plan of action. You were going to go to things, and to be honest, I think it's actually worked out for the best that you had this kidnapping yourselves, because it allowed me to sort of really get to grips with some of the story elements that really hadn't had a chance to breathe.
Yeah.
And give you guys a chance to sort of get some information that was otherwise quite hard to articulate in terms of here are things that are happening, as opposed to I need to do an order on. To understand the stakes, sort of the context for some things going on. But having the individual who has struggled through all sorts of family traumas, then latch on to an individual, and part of that, so I just didn't really think about it. It was just meant to be, again, one of those little one-off, here's a nice thing.
Yeah.
and then it turned into a yeah, okay, this actually you've actually sort of spun sideways into the attention of someone quite major, not associated with the main story, and actually this is now more than incredibly twisted in terms of familial relationships and things like that, which again another big theme of the of the whole campaign and story and things like that, and then basically led to you guys running away from a zombie apocalypse.
It's fine.
It's fine. Everything's fine. It's fine. You're in icy nighttime, snowy, foggy streets with literally an entire city of undead all sort of focusing in on you, and that was actually kind of fun to actually have an opportunity to do that kind of attrition based game, which we've not really done, because I think one of the things that 5th edition has really, it feels to me, has really done has because it's got the mechanic of the short rest and long rest, which I'd never played 4th, so I don't know if it came into that, but certainly wasn't really sort of anything that I used in 3rd.
Because I never really played 4th.
No, I never even touched. I just wasn't playing D&D or anything at the time.
Yeah, no, I was the same.
And so what that's tended to do has tended to be that rather than the kind of D&Ding that was happening when I was actively playing, which was kind of early editions, it was that idea of the dungeon crawl where you would slog your way through and you'd do that managing of your resources and get as far as you could, knowing that if you left the place and run back, that it would start to restock back up, so you were trying to make a big enough dent
to then
before coming away. Whereas because this is now much more, feel of it is not tending to, people aren't tending to be wanting to do dungeon crawls. It's more encounters and stories and bits like pieces. The style has sort of has moved and changed in that way. It's tended to be, aha, I have a thing that our goal we're going to go and do. We're going to go do that, and then we're going to go and recover and have a think about it. And it actually makes it less challenging in terms of the resource management, in terms of the type of gameplay. That's my experience of it. So to be able to do that kind of attrition-based, basically treating a city as a dungeon.
So it looks,
but still encounters-based. Actually, sort of was refreshing for me, anyway.
It looks as though Short Rest came in 5th edition.
Okay.
So yeah, before that it was Long Rest. I was trying to sort of, it's like you say, it's that whole. We've been trying to, we were trying to make dents so that we had enough time just to.
Yeah, because you knew you'd have to rest overnight, and also especially with healing being not quite as flexible with earlier editions, sometimes you knew that you might have to rest for a couple of days, and managing that trade-off of how secure a place you could secure within an area to give yourselves a chance to recover.
And I still like that idea that sometimes wounds that you suffered might not just be an overnight heal.
Yeah.
You could be off the battlefield or off the campaign for weeks on end because you've had your leg chopped off by a fucking half giant or something.
Yeah.
And
I think thematically, actually thinking about it, because there was no automatic healing overnight when you rested. If you had to rest, you had to literally, as you said, you had to take weeks off, and you'd heal D8 plus your Constitution adjustment for a week of rest. It was a lot less forgiving in that respect. That's fine. I've just sort of changed the way I throw things at you guys now. But that's it. It's a style choice of the type of gaming. If we ever wanted to run something that felt that much more desperate and things like that,
I think Dark Sun runs similar, but that is then brutal.
Yeah. But it's that sort of thing as a house rule. If we wanted to sort of give an experiment of that could be of doing a short series one shot where you don't get healing dice for resting, and seeing what difference that makes to the way that people play. and I could, out of the corner of my eye, see Morgan shaking his head furiously with an extremely worried expression on his face, which tells it's yeah, it is piquing all those horrible aspects of me as a DM that's now making me want to do it even more because I am a horrible person. And the more I talk, the more his eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger in that sort of shock. He's not quite shot Pikachu, but he's getting there, you know. Oh, we got the prayers going now as well. There you go.
It's that whole like sometimes I've seen people run areas in games that are completely that not necessarily have anti-magic fields, but just have no magical energy in them. So sorcerers and wizards are then, or sorcerers and warlocks more than anything, just aren't able to act as they normally would, or you put them down to cantrips.
Yeah.
And you watch as panic, and because obviously it's one of those things that it's almost like silence, but across an entire plane of, or you can do the whole thing of like there are no safe places. You are, you know, you are what.
Well, this is what it was. It's literally what you just had in Ilmac. There were no safe spaces.
We are so we including me. We'd all got complacent because we thought there are always safe places.
And then the DM starts laughing when you start talking about taking a long rest.
And it's that whole throwing stuff at players that don't expect it.
I think that's what it's a great tool for DMs is having the confidence to change the pace of a game. I mean, this last one's been a grand idea. You've had 3-4 weeks of this constant, and then suddenly, hey, Tanglefinger saying, "Oh, there you are! I've been looking all over for you," and suddenly the look of relief on everyone's faces, especially as I stopped being able to say the word revivify. Well, Tanglefinger stopped being able to say the word revivify, or rather, couldn't stop saying the word revivify, and
so funny.
that was. I mean, that was just off the top of my head because earlier in the day I've been reading one of the Witches novels, and there's the thing about having to send a courier to go off and find someone to tell them how to stop spelling the word banana. So that's what the source for that was. But that sort of choice of the thing of that and pulling you through the last bit of that map where there's more undead starting to come out of the crypts, this, that and the other, and suddenly bang, you're in a safe space. And that description of the entire group just going, that's lovely, and just collapsing in one big polycule cuddle puddle, or we're just so tired, we haven't slept for 3 days, oomph, out. And that was gorgeous.
It was just, it was that whole... And it's like anything, it including reflecting real life, where you've been under pressure so much for so long, and then suddenly everything stops.
Yeah.
And how many times have we said it? You're on holiday from work, and you're ill. Because you've stopped, and your body goes, right, let's do a thing.
Ooh.
And this is exactly... especially for me, was where that came from. That whole, you've been under pressure, stop. And then you just... it's almost like we were at a point where our characters needed that constant, ongoing pressure, and then all of a sudden, it's just stopped. And we're just...
It's the whole concept of slasher movies where someone gets startled by a pigeon or a cat.
Yeah.
The fake out to then leaven the tension and the horror and everything else like that. You've got to have that break or that moment of humour or just that sort of and working the other way around, where sometimes actually the mundanity actually feels really uncomfortable because it's a break from the looming darkness of whatever it is that's been after you, and you're expecting it then to come out of the woodwork, literally in some cases. So
it's like when it's like you've got the build up, you've got like the spooky music and the da 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 da, and then you've got like the rabbit jumping
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
and then there's a hook going through someone's tits, and then they're dead, and it's just like that is like my favourite kind of thing, because
it's the unexpected, and
Yeah.
and it's that sort of that change of pace and change of sort of motion and of imagery
Mm.
is what keeps it spiced, because without breaking it up, it gets dull. And
Yeah.
I could have kept that attrition going and going and going and sort of really put it into a survival space of, great, how are you going to get off the island?
Mm-hmm.
And possible, but and that's part one. You found a folding boat. You could have sort of tried to steal one of the other ships that was there. You could have there were various bolt holes I'd factored in there, and fairy portal was one of them. There was another fairy influence in the area as well, which I'd written up as another potential storyline, but it just would have been such a jarring shift to encounter that then.
Yeah.
In the way that it was just no, that's not going to work. I mean, even Tanglefinger was a bit of a Hail Mary sort of, but it was largely coming from listening to you as players, as opposed to or alongside what the characters were saying and how they were reacting. And I could start to hear you all start to get a little bit fractious and actually getting upset.
Oh,
because of the pressure.
Yeah, that was
and that was okay. Lean back, pull the brakes off, and bring in Tanglefinger, and yeah.
It's that whole trying to work out where that line lies of what's good, what is best.
I'd love to say I get it every time. I'd love to say I did, but I don't.
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't. It's I just read what Morgan as I was talking. I read what Morgan wrote, and it was just like, for fuck's sake. Oh, it was just like, oh, okay, right, okay. That's just thrown me completely.
Well, that's a great example again of the thinking on your feet and the derailing, because the DDC, we like having a laugh. We do, and most players like to lighten the atmosphere with wisecracks and things like that. So actually, to be able to run from the, I suppose in some ways the kind of the main storyline of fighting against Fairy was kind of Marvel Universe style quips and fights and heroics and all this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But to be able to get, I'm going to carry on the sentence the way I started it. To be able to get you guys to a point where you're actually so tense that the quips dry up. Was, on the one hand, unexpected, because I wasn't expecting us to get there, but also very rewarding in terms of how invested all the players are. And I'm having to remember to make the difference between talk about players and characters.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's knowing what the players are like and how much you can put into them, and then knowing where you can push characters.
Yeah.
Like you could think, like, obviously, like, we're level 17 now, and I've seen it with not just our game but many other games, including like Dimension 20, even some aspects of Critical Role, which is heavily scripted. Places like that, where players end up putting a lot of themselves into the characters, or aspects of themselves into the characters, and it's knowing where to prod, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And also when you need to do explicit aftercare.
Yeah.
Which is why I always stay around and on the Discord and talk, and sometimes it is just us shooting the breeze and having a natter. Sometimes it's making jokes about the horrendous things that have just been happening, but I treat that as actually part of having, especially where it's been really intense as a session. It's like other intense activities. You need to manage and help people to wind down and come back from that space, dropping them dead, and just go, right, we're going to go off now and make duty and this, that, and the other, and that exciting and incredible and scary thing is, yeah. Anyway, moving on.
It's one of those things that people don't talk about, and it's not just, without going into too much, it's not just BDSM stuff that requires our aftercare. There's a lot of things.
Well, I mean, and that's where I was coming from, without explicitly talking about.
It's that whole. A lot of things in life require aftercare that people don't understand, and D&D, especially, is definitely one of them, because it's such a mentally intense game, and emotionally it can be intense, especially like later on when you've become attached to your characters and all the rest of it, and you do get you do get a drop afterwards because of the excitement, and it happens both ways, whether it be a DM or a player, and you all sort of everybody drops after, because it's the endorphins, the the fun, the joy, like we've had
you do dopamine from successfully doing things. It is for me a big part of why I enjoy playing, is that being in this sometimes very intense fantasy alternative universe away from the real world. But I also remember the intensity, and it's something I've learned as I've grown older to sort of be a bit, to have that attachment. But when I was first starting to play, and I was a lot younger, getting so attached to characters that if something happened unexpectedly or they were killed or whatever, I remember absolutely raging and being devastated at the loss, especially of some of my early characters. It seems hard to say after you've lost a few characters it doesn't mean so much, because that's not true. If you get a character that really clicks in a campaign you're really invested in, and despite the fact that you can do all the right things and still fail, another life lesson. And sometimes that failure stands because of decisions that have been made in the game, or thematically that's a thing that's happened. And I think a great example in media that I've seen of that, again, Critical Role, the end of their first campaign. Was it their first campaign? Or was the end of their first campaign. And they're rounding everything off, and it was Baxeldarn being claimed by the Raven Queen. And
I think that hurt. That was a lot of people just went, "What?"
Yeah, and I remember especially there were players around the table who were ready to throw fists.
And they were sobbing.
Yeah.
And it was.
So it's not a function of how experienced or not you are in the game. It's a really powerful thing to remember about the power of story and the power of how much of ourselves we put into it. I mean, I know people who deliberately play characters that are as far away from themselves as possible, and I know others who will only play characters that are idealized based off some aspect of who they are. And these are both perfectly valid ways of doing it, and no matter what, there will and there does come a time or a game or something where something happens and it hurts, because that investment is still there. You've bought into it. You put that thing. The story you're telling hasn't gone the way you expect.
It's like I've played Valenia a lot like me, because obviously since the last time I was a player, a lot's changed, not just game wise and with me, but trying, like, putting that version of myself out there. Like, I would say Valenia is a lot more open than I am. but also that knowing that this is going to sound really sick. This is a version of this is how I see an almost an idealized version of myself.
Yeah.
And yes, Valenia is very dear to me because it's since transitioning, it's the first female character I've actually played. So to me,
it's interesting. Did you not play any before transition?
No.
That's really interesting because I know lots of people at all ends of the spectrum who have. You're actually quite rare in that respect. In my experience,
it was more that I was so far in not necessarily denial, but I didn't want to make people think that I wasn't this other person.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it.
So, and I played like male power fantasies more than anything. Like I played a lot of barbarians. I played like knight in shining armor, like paladins, like, and they were always big, tall, strong. You know, yes, I still play big, tall, strong characters in D&D, but they're female because that's who I want to be. I like the idea of being a strong person people can rely on, but it's not always the way.
No,
and that is.
And I think one of the wonderful things. I remember your first ideas about Valenia, and you're sort of slightly shocked. Sort of, Valenia's turned into the party mum. And you've been really confused by that because that was not at all the intention that you'd had as you first presented the character. But we've been able to sort of then shift and show other aspects as we've gone through the game.
But then that is an aspect of me again.
Yes.
The whole wanting to look after people and make sure people are okay. And it's more that I had this idea of Valenia. But over time, she just sort of shifted and what was needed rather than what was intended. And
do you see Valenia shifting as the game goes to be moving away from what is needed to what Valenia needs?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a lot more going on, I think, than. Like, it's one of those things that, Valenia is possibly one of my favourite characters that I've ever played, because I get to put a lot of myself in. But then there's also the other end of it where I've played like the character Meekface, who is a goblin artificer, who literally just likes to watch things explode, and she sounds like Stitch. And is this little firecracker of bullshit. And
awesome.
And I love playing her because she's more like a one-shot character that I pull out for one-shots, and she is just full-blown mental. Like people will be like, "Here's the plan," blah 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 blah. She go, "Let's go! We're doing a thing!" And she's gone. And it's just that whole. And it's that whole very different side of like I've played other characters, like I was playing excuse me. Oh my god.
Wow.
That was not even supposed to be that.
The beast has arisen.
Jesus Christ. I thought like it's gonna be a little dainty burp. No.
That's okay. I mean, Joe would have been proud of that. So, you know.
So in our other campaign that was that we were running at the shop, I was playing a sorcerer who was also an assassin.
Okay. Yeah.
So I lent into that the arcane trickster side of things, and and she was very upper class, which I think everybody knows I am really not. But imagine sort of like almost like a James Bond character in female form.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but she was, but what people weren't expecting was like the outburst of anger that she had in her. So that was always fun to just sort of. Thanks, Morgan. Just to push that side, and I like playing different characters, but like I say, Valenia is that more idealized version of myself. Apart from, I would say apart from being green, but who doesn't want to be green?
Absolutely, you know. I mean, as the great philosopher said, it's not easy being green.
Yeah.
I've now got an image of Tanglefinger painting himself green and doing Kermit impressions. And I'm working out how to do it. It's not easy being green.
Tanglefinger, what's your favourite food? Pork.
Doesn't have to be long. No.
It's. I think because obviously I've done a lot of intro games for D&D, obviously working at the shop, all the rest of it, and it's that. There's some really weird cat things on this fucking chicken chaworm. Fuck's sake. Yeah, and like especially like running so many like intro games and seeing people, especially like early people that have never played before, just literally playing themselves.
Yeah,
and
happens a lot, doesn't it?
And it's nice to see, and then you get that random kid that will play some fucking chicken skinned Aarakocra.
Yeah.
and all you can think is fucking Foghorn Leghorn. And you're just like, oh no.
I love running games with people who are new to the game. I love the freshness of ideas. I love seeing the blossoming of people as they get more confident that they can put ideas out there, they can try things, and to sort of start to get an idea and concept of how the things run together. And it's been one of my great joys with this group and campaign that there's a lot of people playing who maybe played one, maybe two games, or none at all, and it's been great. It's to sort of have everyone evolving and sort of teaching each other and coming up with stuff. And part of that has been sort of some of the incredibly strange character ideas and or action ideas. My particular favourite being one of someone attempting to mug the party in the middle of a town, and Kerner nearly melting three houses and a passing watch patrol.
That was so funny. Because it was literally, I'm going to use was it Chromatic Orb?
No, it was.
Or was it the acids?
It was basically a huge great glob of acid.
Yeah.
There's a 20-foot radius, and they upcast it, and it was just, that's a lot of dice to roll. And I'm thinking, I deliberately made this like a first or second level sneak thief.
Yeah.
And okay, well, and the entire thing of that was that it was a chance to sort of just have a chance for doing some chase mechanics. And so the thing I learned from that was never to start a chase on an open line of sight.
Yeah.
Always have them just duck down a corridor.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So that, and also I'm finding also to run it more as theatre of the mind. That works a lot better as well. So that way I can, especially using, because the tables in DMG and stuff are actually really helpful at having the random things that get in the way. I want to sit down and work out a nature version rather, because that's very much an urban thing.
Yeah.
But doing something that's sort of out in the wilds, I think
random trees falling down.
Or sort of roots you didn't see, or deer bursting across the path and stuff like that. So that's probably going to be just something I quietly sort of think about in the background. the oh god, what's the thing? Okay, change the subject slightly because it's my mind just got
Yeah, no,
sucked
that's-
into something else. Okay, strangest unused plot line that you dropped, not because the game went a random direction, but because you knew the players would kill you if you did it.
That's
So I tell you, such.
God.
So
You
I tell you
tell
more
me,
what you're thinking.
yeah.
Okay, so this is literally something that occurred to me last week while I was doing some thinking on sort of some of the end game bits and pieces for the Winter's Night and resolving dangling plotline bits and pieces and partly some jokes about yet more familial trauma and the power of stories and the structure of stories. And we've already had this concept of the mantle of the Winter's Night being a thing, and other storyline stuff going on in the background that will reflect and come through on that. But storyline idea that came to mind that I have immediately thrown out because, oh dear God, the shouting that you would all do. We have already introduced time travel shenanigans through the use of the Feywild. Headline: Loris is the Winter's Night.
I think that would have been a good one, but yeah, I think there would have been a lot of people shouting at you. That would have been. Yeah. It
would, and the thing is, it would work. It would absolutely work because the introduction of Loris changed the entire direction of the werewolf troll Carcana aspect. The introduction of the concept that Carcana had actually broken the curse because of Loris, that there was a potential, there was an heir to the throne, there was a nephew, this innocent afflicted with the curse, who had been adopted and brought into the bosom of everyone's family, and then for it to turn out that actually everything that's taking place is that Loris would actually end up being taken into the Feywild, and through time travel paths of the Feywild trickery would become the Winter's Night. And you having to do that decision of literally the Hitler baby dilemma. Or rather, you finding out that it was likely going to happen. Do you kill Loris now? Do you find some way of stopping that from happen? Do you take down the big bad as it is, knowing who? Yeah. And I looked at that and I thought it would be absolutely wonderful. It would be, I mean, if I was writing a novel, that's where I'd take it.
Yeah.
But I also don't want to make the lot of you cry. I don't want to wake up having Morgan and Joe inserting bamboo splinters under my fingernails. Or to wake up to find you and Bunny outside my front door with sledgehammers to take my kneecaps out. So I thought on the balance of my personal safety, that I would go with the original idea of there being these four people. I mean, you now know the identity of the Winter's Night.
Yeah.
Morton Blackhand. That's now out in the open, and that's now opened up where you've got this decision to make about whether you go barreling all straight in, because now you know how to summon him, and you've also got rid of the misconception that killing a fairy in Fairyland will kill them permanently.
No.
Because if you'd done that,
he would have just been reborn.
He would have been reborn. Now, that's kind of what led into my idea of Loris being the Winter's Night.
Yeah.
Is that actually the rebirth would come about, the mantle going through down the family line of someone involved in the death, and lots of... Anyway, so that's by the by. So you now know you've got to get him out of Fairyland. You now know you have a means of method of doing it. You now understand why the Mark of Death has been there as a MacGuffin. So you can either go barreling straight in to go for that to disrupt the story, or you know that there are also these artifacts of
Yeah,
his
we
previous
can.
existence that you can use to power up to make the fight easier. That might be
And that-
disrupting his use of allies or some of the magics or things like that. Yeah, and I can't wait to find out which way you want to go, because that's the next. That's for me is the next sort of why I'm frantically making up different maps or putting other things out of background. So whichever way you go, I've got a way to take the story.
Yeah.
But this is where you guys have agency.
Yeah, so I'd say one of the plot points that I dropped. What, not even that long? I want to say not that long ago. It's a good couple of months. Was to do with Ku, and had this cursed amulet that they're wearing.
Okay.
That has the previous wearer's consciousness inside. And I was going to have
sort of magic jar type.
Yeah. And I was going to have it that every sentient creature that Ku took the life of or killed would end up in there.
Okay.
And then end up as like a cacophony of spirits and slowly driving him mad. And that was then going to lead into him being like turning on his friends, and in the end I was like,
still a bit bum,
and I was like, I feel that would be too much for, first of all, a person to role play,
and
secondly, that keeping track of everything would be insane. But then on the other side of it, there was the, how would that affect someone in the way that they were thinking about stuff? Like, do I kill this person? What would happen? And it would be all these people going, well, I had a family. Like, I was only a guard because they employed me. I have a family. I have children. I'd really go on to that. But then I was like, no, I think that would be too heavy.
Yeah, and quite, I think also quite difficult mechanically.
I was, it was something that I was still working with, but I'm
not saying never run with that idea, because you're right. There's a kernel in there that could work.
Yeah,
but it might be something more suited to something that is more narrative based rather than traditional adventuring.
Yeah,
it might be the sort of thing of a murder mystery, or something where that you're sort of building a society, sort of like Drow noble house politics.
Yeah, but it was I think because the players in the other game just sort of evolved beyond the need for that, and especially Ku as a character has this amulet that currently only has three voices in it, and then there was a plot line where they found the temple where this piece of this piece of jewelry was made, and although it's still hanging there, I don't know if I'm going to use it. Is that there were other pieces of jewelry and equipment that had the same treatment to take the souls of the previous wearers, and it looks as though this person had sold these things to various people. And I don't know if I'm going to run with this or not, because I think it could end up being very messy.
Yeah.
And it's...
Yeah. And sometimes actually letting go of these things...
Yeah.
...works. And you can reuse bits of it once your brain's had a chance to kind of pick it over a bit. There's been several times things where... Oh, I mean, again, the grand example of you guys escaping Ilmarin, but there's been other stuff through the campaign where my initial instinct of where the story goes hasn't matched up to the sheer joy of where the players have been taking the story, and so I've just either quietly dropped something or just we've worked up a resolution to, and now we're going to move on.
Yeah.
and I think that's a healthy thing, because again, it just adds to the sense of achievement of actually we've solved that problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that's better for you guys to be. I'm using you guys as a generic catch-all
Yeah.
for players whenever I'm DMing.
Yeah,
by
no.
the way, of people sort of going, yeah, we solved that thing. Feels better and gives more agency than the GM got bored of that plot line or
Yeah.
couldn't quite work it out to make it work.
Yeah. It's
Sometimes it's 6 of one, half a dozen the other, but
playing with stuff is always fun.
I rarely retcon. I think I've done it once recently.
Mm-hmm.
Largely because I'd made a comment at the end of an evening and then gone, actually I don't want to do that. So I've quietly sort of stepped back and taken a different direction. But it's rare. Normally I'll run with what my brain comes out with on the spur of a moment, because sometimes it's just more fun to do that.
Yeah, it's it's I always find that no matter how much I plan, there's always that thing where someone will say something and I'll go, actually no, that's a better way to go. And I will change then where things are going. So at least then I get a chance to play about with, like, they're going, oh, well, we're going to go... Sorry, that rain just got really heavy.
Can't hear it at this end, you're fine.
Like, they might say, oh, we're going to go into this place, and I'll go, actually, yeah, I can make that work in a different way, and then...
Yeah. I'll just move and reskin this encounter.
Yeah.
There, you know.
And it's one of those things that happened with what I call the mimic, what I called the mimic cave.
Yeah. Okay.
And it wasn't the fact that it was a cave full of mimics. The cave was a mimic. An incredibly old and ancient mimic. And it was the fact that they were walking through the tunnel, and it was solid ground, and I said, the ground underneath just feels very spongy to you, etc., etc. And yeah, and it was just, this mimic was there. It was just this ancient mimic, and they were walking into its mouth. But halfway along this cave, there was a group of satyr.
Okay.
Just partying like no one's business. And I said, you can sit here, you can, they're inviting you in to rest, party, whatever you want to do. And it ended up with them literally falling asleep. And
Okay.
and days had passed before they knew it. Because fairy fairy shenanigans and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And they found out that one of these people that I was going to have as a not necessarily a recurring villain, but like the villain for the arc.
Okay. Yeah.
Was actually again, it was a mantle that was passed from one person to another.
Yeah.
And that this person was a mother to 3 children. She didn't want to be an evil ruler, so she was trying to change what the previous ruler had done, and all the people that lived in her realm actually liked her rather than. But I made it so that when they were introduced to her originally, they were attacked by these screaming, horrendous creatures. But I then retconned later on, because it worked better, that they had been under the illusion that was over the entire town.
Okay.
And they were attacking this ruler's children, and that's why she went after them.
Gotcha.
And then once,
Yeah, like that.
and then once they then got talking to her, it was then revealed that she was, she wasn't this malevolent fucking evil being, and that she was as much of a victim as anybody else that was there, and it was all sort of tying all of that in together.
It reminds me of there's a thing I read on Tumblr years ago. One of those extending conversations for which it is so famous, and it was a game that this guy and his sister had played. And it originated when they were starting playing with their respective toys, and there was this particularly broken and ferociously evil-looking toy who was called the Evil Vizier. And the way it worked out in the game was actually the Evil Vizier was literally his job title, but he was actually a really competent and really good guy who was going out of his way, similar to what you're just saying, to actually make the world a better place. But the problem was he was so creepy looking and behaving that everyone assumed that he was actually being a horrible, manipulative person, or he was doing good things for bad purposes. But every time they investigated, they could find no proof. And they couldn't work out why the king kept the Evil Vizier by his side.
Yeah.
And just you describing that literally just put me right in mind of that. And I've always just kept that as a little sort of thing just at the back of my mind of sometimes the fun you can have with the titles that you give characters or NPCs or people that you encounter,
which is one of the reasons I like in the homebrew world that we're running in. I like the idea that words have power.
Yeah,
like the whole idea that started off as a joke with Morgan's character naming the chicken that he adopted, naming it Asmodeus.
Yeah,
and then, because words have power, the spirit of Asmodeus occupied this chicken. And
I mean, to be fair, chickens are really sketchy.
And somewhere in, we'll say the Nine Hells, because I haven't actually given the underworld a proper name in this instance. There's this avatar of Asmodeus walking around pecking the floor.
Okay.
And people think Asmodeus has just lost his mind. And it's not until they get to Morgan's...
Or I'm assuming that it's part of an evil plot.
Yeah, and it's not until they get to Morgan's character's homeland that the avatar of Asmodeus is in this cage, and this chick is going, "Why is my body over there?" And getting these ever occasionally getting these moments of lucidity. And
I like
being able to talk to people, ask questions, and the first time that this happened is just Asmodeus going, "What the fuck?" And it's just playing with that idea that words have power, and the whole because she was called the Ashen Mother, so she ruled over the Ashen Mountain, because that makes sense.
Yeah.
Which was basically a volcanic region. There was nothing sinister about it. It's just a volcanic region that uses volcanic rock as building material. So it all looks very spooky, very dark.
Yeah.
But they're just normal people. They're just going, but because it
does put me in mind of the kind of the counterpart of that, of you guys going to a place literally called Ilmarrow, a city of the undead, and going, "Oh, let's go to the pub," and treating it like the most normal place. And okay, part of that was you've got two characters who've grown up in Karnath, which is another form of undead use, part of natural life, this and the other. Whereas Ilmarrow, much more the traditional moustache twirling nastiness. But it was that sort of, lovely sort of undead soldiers. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no, check. We've had a lot of those recently. That's fine. And this, that, and the other. And did you spill my pint? Oh, your pint of blood. Oh, this is going to get quite unpleasant now, isn't it? Sort of thing. And You know, the beggar being a shriveled undead mind flayer.
That nobody batted an eyelid to.
Yeah,
I remember when you said that, I just went. But because it was my character, it was like, nope.
yep.
Nope.
Let's nope it out of this one.
It was the. I'm not saying anything. It's that whole thing of knowing what you know, and then what your character would do. It's like, oh, it's just one of those.
Yeah.
No
It's
react.
not a good thing. Yeah.
Just like
all the bodies in all the bodies in the gibbets that were sort of basically being used by Lady Ilmarrow as a basis, a spy system, looking through the eyes of every single undead. Oh, that's where you all are. Boop, 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 boop.
yeah, and we're just
only
like
being.
and we're just like completely nonchalant about the whole lot.
Yeah, just that. You go, okay, I'm not, and it did get me to the point where I was just going, okay, I'm now just going to throw in as many horror tropes as possible,
Yeah.
just to see who freaks first.
And it was that it was that whole thing of I'm playing this as my character, and Valenia is one of the most insanely naive people that will see the best in most people. And even they could be ripping people's heads off. She'd be going, well, maybe they did something wrong.
Yeah, well, that's a bit messy. I wonder how they're going to tidy that up.
Yeah.
Or, as Logan said, you literally had undead pirates.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was just like it's fine. It's
everything's
fine.
isn't it? And it was only and of all the things to freak you all out and get you running, it was the concept of, oh, the guards been called.
Yeah.
And that's when you started running.
Thing is, I think that's a very D&D thing.
Yeah,
Like-
this dragnet of every single undead entity in the city starting to try and track you down, and that was the point. People started to get a little. I think it was as I was starting to sort of make you make more and more perception checks, and stealth checks, and things like that, as you were actually trying to avoid being seen by things. And then having ghoul beggars come out going, easy lunch, and yeah, technically. They were a really minor thing, but because of the time pressure and the smoke and mirrors of you can hear noise approaching,
It was
and keeping everything off camera.
it was brilliant. It was. I've got to say that's possibly one of my favorite things that you've done. Was that?
Definitely. I've huge fun with it.
And I think that shows, like, yes, we are worldly adventurers, but incredibly naive about things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, we are used to, like that other area of where we've been adventuring. You can hit you can hit things with an axe, shoot things with a bow. That's fine. The nuances of socialization.
Or my particular thing that the real takeaway that I've had about the DDC is that they assume that if someone is being polite to them, that they're nice.
And I think
which is a wonderful character trait to have.
And I think that says a lot about us as people.
Yeah.
Not just the characters, but as people in general.
Yeah. The concept that you might be being used or set up or everything else like that, which meta narrative is such a core part of our queer existence. That actually the power fantasy is we don't live in a world where people are trying to trick us or manipulate us or are talking to us but not having our best interests at heart.
It's that whole in everyday life, you like as a queer person, you assume that most people are out to hurt you. Whereas the whole D&D side of it, we think everybody's got our best interests at heart because we're living in that fantasy of.
Yeah.
And it's a very. I never thought about it like that until that moment. It's like.
Yeah.
It's that very much. Yeah, it's that very much that. Everything about it's doing those things that wouldn't normally happen.
Like getting 8 hours rest a night, speaking
Yeah.
multiple languages,
The-
having a successful freelance career.
Owning your own home.
Yeah. All these fantasy aspects, including a society that isn't trying to kill you
Yeah.
just for who you are, because it's multi-species and all this, that, and the other, and it's always been played as a queer world, and that's been a great joy. But it has been power fantasy aspects of the way we played it, and I've not really thought about it explicitly in those terms. I just sort of noted that I kind of went the Hollywood British actor approach to villains.
Yeah.
You're so you and especially as you've had so many of the trolls, ravening, horrible, rabid or elemental type creatures that can't be reasoned with, and then suddenly you get people talking rather precisely.
Properly.
Yeah, properly, this, that, and the other, and so you've immediately got that contrast with the ravening, unthinking aggression, and it's been such a relief that you've all, by and large, gone for it. What I think is an interesting counterpoint is you've got Arwen, who always speaks properly, and is concerned for the welfare and well-being of all people, and plays things straight down the line. And I'm finding it really difficult to find something story-wise to pin on him so far, other than his church is trying to sell him as a saint.
Yeah, which I love the idea of. I love that. I think that's amazing, and I do like that whole idea of romanticizing here the adventurers and people seeing this. Like, we're playing a lot of the time idealized versions.
Good, yeah.
But then taking that a step further, of these people that are spinning these stories about our adventurers are then making our characters godlike in the way they're presenting us.
Yeah, novels, merch,
it's
pins, all these things that you've been encountering as you've been getting more powerful and more well known. It's all been part of that. So to then suddenly have the 5-year blip, and yeah, very much Marvel Universe style blip. You were not aware of the passage of time because
we weren't.
That was great fun to see that, to pull that rug out from under each of you, to try and sort of come to grips with what the outside world thought had been happening.
And then you've got that mythos that had been grown about us, that we'd perished in the pursuit of saving people and
saving the kingdom
and all the rest of it. And then for us to come out and being the usual fucking crap show that we normally are, and that
clash of expectations between the kind of between the general populace and not just general populace, but actually leaders of the local communities who are suddenly having, and again, this is very old tropes of that sort of come slam up against the reality of actually, don't meet your heroes, but kind of reversed for you guys, because you are the heroes that people shouldn't ever meet.
It's that, it's that whole thing of, technically, if we're rolling into town, shit's probably gone wrong somewhere.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, they're like, oh my god, they're saviours, they're blah, 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 blah. And we're going, where's the pub? And it's that whole thing of, oh, what? And just seeing,
mighty adventurers, my dog is lost down the well. Well, go get him then.
Why aren't you getting him? It is a rope. And just watching, and just seeing how the world around us reacts to who we are as normal.
Hope being the subject of yet another cult,
These people are like, oh, Hope is the savior of this, that, and the other. We can bind them to this thing and do this thing, and Hope's just going
because they are this interface of the infernal and the celestial and blah 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 blah. No,
and Hope just going, I just want to be loved.
I just want to sit and knit cock socks on my fairy dragon. I mean,
and it is that whole like the whole thing with Valenia being this womanizer that destroys marriages, and she literally accidentally falls into bed with people.
Yeah,
she's not even trying. She literally just
and you've even got the thing of your parents turn up. And I think you were half expecting me to do something really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And they were genuinely entirely wholesome and supportive, and were trying to fix you up with some girl that you grew up with back home.
And it's that. And it's all of that. It's this. Yeah, it's always the stories surrounding the stories. The best thing, and that's what builds a world, in my opinion. Like with the homebrew world, a lot of the stuff that has happened because it's either part of a character's backstory. So this is now a new part of the world that has evolved around this part, or like Koo going to wizarding college to learn how to be a wizard. They're the only Kenku to ever have gone to that college. That college now has an outreach program to other Kenkus, to get them in. I even turned around to Moon and said, right, I want you to tell me everything you can about that. Give them a chance to stretch their writing wings, in a proverbial sense. And say, right, tell me what's there. Tell me what's going on. And we literally sat down and designed the entire thing together. So, and that's the whole thing. Like, there's a town to sort of like the northwest of where the characters are at the moment, called Mad Hollow, which is shielded from everyday view. From the outside, it looks more like a ruin. But it's actually home to a vampire colony.
Okay.
Which was brought about by Morgan.
Of course. Because
of his previous character, that since the campaign ended, retired there. Retired for a vampire is not really a thing. And oversees the entire place, and it's blossoming, and they're on the verge of opening up trade negotiations and trade routes, and it's all of that. And then you've got Moon's old character, Music, who found out they're a demigod, and the reason they were dumped, that they thought they were dumped in the forest, they weren't. They were put there on purpose to be found by this couple that then found them, and because they were such a good bard and very good at telling stories, they now have their own cult that follows them, and their main thing is that they don't wear shoes.
Okay.
Because
we're back to Creepy Keith again.
Because Music never wore shoes.
Okay.
And
right, got it.
And because the other reason was they were a tiefling, so they had hooves.
Yeah.
So they never wore shoes. But this cult don't wear shoes in honor of them.
Love it.
And that has then evolved into its own sort of cult and religion. And every now and again I'll drop like a little, as you're watching, you notice this person has unwashed feet and no shoes.
Right, yeah, nice little nods.
Nods to previous things.
Similar sort of idea, similar sort of vein then. Other than Creepy Keith, because Creepy Keith is just legendary.
He's going to end up with his own fucking cult at this rate.
Show at this rate, yeah. What are some of your favourite running jokes that have become part of the in either your or my campaign?
Oh, when someone asks you something and you go, yeah,
Yeah, so many.
Or my brain's just gone blank completely for hours.
Okay. I mean, my I think if I had to sort of pick things off, favorite running jokes, absolutely the mimics.
Oh, yeah, the mimics. I love that because we were talking about it, like the fact that we were talking about the Baba Yaga hut. Yes.
Yeah.
Was it last night? Yesterday?
No, it was earlier in the week.
Earlier.
We were streaming Destiny.
Yeah, and we said about like the house just wandering off one day, just
Yeah.
like chicken legs, like Baba Yaga's hut, just walking through the city.
I do know it was last session because
Yeah.
that was it, because Tangle's been saying, and I've made certain the house doesn't walk away.
Yeah,
And
and it's that whole and I think the idea about the bench slayers early on was
yeah.
I loved that idea, and the fact that we had like
Nobody knew what
Nobody
the hell it
knew.
was all about. Yeah.
and then you've got like the whole like Foreign's pit fighting career, which was the fact that between us all we managed to skin it as some sort of WWE superstar show that was in the underground, that just no matter who you were went there. They knew it was seedy, they knew it was illegal, they still went.
It was huge, and the fun I had making up a roster for that session in the Undercroft,
It was
where it was mixed between what was taking place in the ring and you guys being on working the crowd for information.
yeah.
That's still one of my favourite.
To me,
kind of mixed mode.
to me, it
sessions.
almost felt like, it's gonna sound really bad. It almost felt like peak D&D. Does that make sense?
It does, and I've never thought of it that way, and that's actually really flattering. Thank you.
It's that whole one thing's going on, but also we're working the crowd,
Yeah.
and it's that whole plots within plots.
Mm.
And that's what I really liked about it, and the fact that we then stumbled upon like the undead stuff that was going on, which then led to the kidnap of Cole.
Yeah.
All of that, all on top of each other, was amazing.
And your reactions to Cole being used as a power source.
Yeah, that was just amazing. And then obviously we then got the ongoing joke of Kerner being 4.
Yes.
Which
And setting her sister on fire. Setting the cot on fire.
setting the cot on fire.
Yeah.
and it's that whole the lore of the characters.
Hmm.
And how those jokes then evolve into how the characters are portrayed.
Yeah, I think that's some of the great fun of D&D, is the little throwaway jokes we make to relieve tension, or just because the stupidest idea has just popped into your brain, and we run with it.
Yeah,
and we have fun with it, and it's not even rule of cool. It's just, you know what?
Let's see where this goes.
Yeah, so the mimic that most frequently is referenced is the bin, because finish up and scrape the dinner into the bin, it burps back at you, wonderful,
Yeah, it's
simple stuff like that, that sort of the ongoing what was the ongoing saga of who the hell is writing all these erotic novels about Thorin.
And we find out it's Cole.
Yeah.
and it's just that it's that whole, literally everything is it's having fun in the serious moments.
I find it particularly, the reason I like, one of the reasons I like doing it, quite apart from it gives you guys more things to play with and encourages you to come out with these stupid little ideas, partly gives you agency in terms of the description, the building, the world, all those sorts of things, but it's also part of building the impression of it being a living world.
Mm-hmm.
That things are happening that don't revolve around the party.
Yeah.
And I've always found that to be a really powerful tool when we're building our worlds, when we're telling our stories, and especially if you're trying to foil a plot, that actually it adds that if we don't do this thing, then a thing is going to happen. And sometimes there'll be the, you know what, I don't believe it, we're going to go off and do this other, we're going to sidetrack, we're going off over here. And the original plot keeps going.
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly you're having to deal with the oh dear God and pick it up, and that's kind of where I got the idea for the whole thing with the trolls and the Winter's Night and the Gathering thing, was that it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse the longer it took you to track down where they were
and
to confront it.
And was it Ilminster? Not Ilminster.
No.
The undead guy and his boyfriend or husband that were doing the drugs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, making the drugs. It was all tied to the hags.
And then that's obviously then come back full circle. So we've got hags again. We've got undead again, and it's all of that sort of. And it was that fact that adding those small, also although not a joke, adding these small bits of queerness into the world.
Yeah.
Which, like, I do the same. Like, the first thing one of the first, not first thing I did, but it completely happened by accident, was the fucking hell, what's their names? Was the Stormhammers.
Okay.
Rosie and it's going to annoy me now. Basically, Rosie and her wife, who are ex-adventurers, that opened an inn and started brewing their own ale.
Yeah, love it.
And I remember like someone trying to start, like one of the party members trying to start a fight, and literally from the kitchen there is a whistling noise as this carving knife comes screaming out the door and literally lands between this character's fingers. And Rosie pops up from behind a bar. There'll be no fighting in this bar, you see. And just watch them go, what? And like, and I made them all roll like perception checks and all the rest of it. And like there was like dragon heads and all these mythical weapons in stands and pieces of armor, and they were like, oh.
maybe not here, maybe not today.
And it was that whole sort of like making them realize that these things were happening before they were around, and just sort of playing with that, and and then adding jokes in there, like the fact that like they are an old married, like they're dwarfs and they're an old married couple, you know, and they bicker and they argue, but at the end of the day they've got each other's backs, they love each other dearly, and then they ended up adopting a were creature who at the time was a child, and then 25 years have passed since the last campaign to this campaign, and that child has been out adventuring a little bit, and is now head of the introductions of the Adventurers Guild in one of the cities.
Gotcha. Right.
So adding those little tidbits in, just to you can't fight here, it's the war room. Yes. Adding those little story beads in, and you know, and sometimes I do feel that sometimes a game can get too serious if you don't add those. In.
Again, we're talking about that kind of breaking up the mood and the theme as we go through. In the current one, Elfin John seems to be the comic relief. Yeah. With a name like Elfin John, you can expect it. You got to, yeah.
They will be amazing. They will sort stuff out, all the rest of it, and then, like at the end of a battle, he'll be like, "I'm just going to go over here and just takes a finger or takes a hand," and it's just like, and there's Koo trying to chase him down. Go! You can't take body parts. And then them going to a spa and then the people at the spa saying, "Oh, we'll take your equipment. We'll clean it. We'll polish it. You know, we'll make sure everything's clean for when you go off." And Elfin turning his bag out and all these desiccated body parts just And like at the bottom of the thing was this lump of meat that he'd taken on their first adventure that he'd never salted, never done anything with, and it just slopped,
Vile.
just slomped.
Oh.
And I went, how much food did you have in your bag? And he went, well, I had blah, 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 rations, blah, 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 etc., etc. And I went, yeah, all of that's spoiled. I said, and tastes like shit because you've had this desiccated, or this absolutely rancid piece of meat in the bottom of your bag. And then Elfin having to go out and charm the living balls off of this asexual fucking... I can't remember the name of the elephant people now.
Loxodon?
Loxodon.
Loxodon. There you go. Yeah.
Trying to charm the balls off of this asexual Loxodon. Called Calvin Harris.
Of course.
Oh no, it was Carfin Harris.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So and it was like a whole sort of like trying to do that, and then trying to charm the balls off of this, etc., because he had no money at all at this point. It was just like, look, this is what happens.
I keep meaning to try and do a spa/beach day thing for the DDC, and it just never quite works out.
No.
No, not yet. Who knows? We'll get there eventually. It's just I sort of had an idea of doing it, and this was me not reading the map properly. But when you were heading to the Lazar principalities, I had in mind to do a whole Pirate of the Caribbean type thing, and to work it in there. And then I looked actually at where it is on the map, and it's more that's more Vikings actually.
Yeah,
and not to say there aren't nice sunny places, but we're not talking.
Yeah, we're talking cold weather.
Spas. Yeah, you're talking kind of at best sort of volcanic pool, mud spas and things like that. And just with the pace of things, with where things were. Yeah, no, we don't have time to do that. But it is on my checklist of things I would like to give you guys a chance to just have some fun with.
They're
no
fun
stakes whatsoever.
They're fun downtime activities.
Yeah,
and I like playing about with them just because you can have a lot of fun, and it gives characters a good chance to really role play rather than like just sitting in a bar. They can just it's I think one of my favourite things I ever did that was a surprise for the other lot was they found a portable hole.
Okay, yeah.
And there was no there'd been a murder, someone was looking for something, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But they couldn't find any trace of the people, any trace of there was speckles of blood, but nothing really, And they found this portable hole. When they opened the portable hole, all this blood just poured out, and all these body parts. It was just like,
that'll be it then.
And it was just that whole sort of like them going, "Oh, well, we found where the body is."
Yeah. That's not far off from where you found the portable hole in the ruined bar.
Yeah,
you found where the family were hiding.
Yes, that wasn't horrifying.
No, not even slightly. Yeah,
yeah, it's. Sorry, excuse me. What's your favourite plot twist you've thrown at us?
I think Loris. It just had such an impact.
Yeah.
And all your reactions were so unfiltered, and it felt. I mean, yeah, it felt like a key. The entire direction of the campaign shifting with it.
Yeah.
Because suddenly it gave you something to focus on, and so you weren't on the back foot reacting to these aberrations and horrible things and werewolf attacks and things like that, you get something to fight for. And I think between that and Carcana having basically retained their identity and their control, especially coming straight after that whole sequence we'd had with yourselves, those of you who'd contracted lycanthropy, and how we'd run the campaigns there of you can choose one or the other, but the werewolf side is going to do the other, and having to factor that into how you were operating. I think that absolutely was for me still remains a real high point. I think
that whole section,
that thing it was a great pivoting away from what had been the kind of the monster of the week approach to it's sort of that thing of it really sort of was you actually had something to fight for, and you taking control of your own destinies and everything else like that, but also it was a point of connection, closely followed by Kerner proposing to Carcana,
which was beautiful.
That was just amazing. And also connected to that, all the revelation of what was going on with the night hag and the succubus in the lead up to the wedding. Yeah,
which played so well into everything that was going on.
I remember getting various messages from people with don't you dare, don't you dare do that. I just like, what the and it's just, and then to have it to sort of then to do the curtain twitched by, and again the look of relief on everyone's face. It's something we can hit.
It's that.
And Cole getting chatted up by one of the Cambions was also entertaining.
Oh, that was
just failed. He just failed every charisma.
It was
save.
It was just like, how does that happen?
And so that was a big one. I think the other plot twist, and again this was just something that just came out of thin air, was the whole thing with the innkeeper dying and thinking, I'll do anything to save him. Anything.
That was so good. Should we take a quick break?
I think so, because I've just realised it's nearly 8 o'clock.
Take a quick break.
Put the kettle on.
Go to the toilet, all the rest of it. So go and grab a drink, people, and we'll be back in. Won't be long because there's only me and you this time.
Move and stretch, everyone. And like I said, I'm going to stick the kettle on.
And we'll see you in a minute. Bye. And we're back. Hello. Ta-da. Oh, yeah.
Needed that.
Hey, Max. And a nice cup of tea.
Hello. Homemade mocha.
How's your birthday been, Max? We'll do a... We'll ask the
Quick catch up.
questions.
Yay! Oh, I'm glad it's going well.
It's been emotional. Oh,
In a good way. I
good
hope.
way. Fingers crossed. We'll do a catch up before we get back on topic.
Yeah. Or open the floor if anyone has a question they'd like to ask.
Yes, if
That's
you.
sort
Oh, bless. You got to give you. Oh.
good. Yes. Happy level up day.
It's yeah. So, yes, we're opening. We're going to open up. If you want to ask a question, please feel free. We're doing D&D questions, DMing questions,
Storylines.
Yeah.
Weird things that have thrown us.
I'm gonna say who's been your favourite NPC so far?
Oh, well, I think there's really only one person that could possibly be.
I knew that was coming.
He's such a. I think what I love about the whole lore of Boggles is it says that they are born from the sadness of an abandoned child,
Which
and
is
that's right at the heart of who Tanglefinger is, and how he looks after the place and cares for everyone that's there, because he doesn't want to be left alone. And when you all go off an adventure, he gets very, very nervous and really quite upset, and that's why he came looking for you, because you've been gone an awful long time. You know.
bless him. It's
to the point where he shouted at the Queen of the Fairies to help out.
yeah. Like I think for me, it's. If we go by Sunday game, I would say, yeah, I think I'm up there with Tanglefinger. But also, I love Diane Ryan.
Yes.
This whole
Gone too soon, that was, but that was mostly played off camera, and that's worked better for it, I think,
Yeah.
in some ways.
And then from the Tuesday game, I want to say, part of me wants to say it's Creepy Keith, just because of the lore, but there's no lore behind him. He's just this creepy foot fetish dude that is a barman. But also, I think Gearstock, who is this eccentric time-travelling gnome that started off as a completely throwaway character. It was meant to be a drunk gnome in a bar, and ended up with this book. And you're not in the book. You're not in the book. Why aren't you in the book? You've got to be in the book. Why are you in the book? Ah! New timeline. New timeline has started. And just this whole.
Yeah. Enough to throw in there to get see if anyone's listening. Another NPC that I liked for the impact is Old Maria.
Old Maria. Remind me.
The skeleton.
Oh
housekeeper
yes.
That Hope had grown up with, and was still there, looking after the farm, after the coach house and minding the gardening, and despite all the chaos and absolute.
Everything being on fire.
World end, everybody. It's still going around pruning the roses, stepping over the bodies, sort of.
Yeah, moving the bodies. So,
yeah, stacking them up, and
it's that. I think it's sometimes those background characters that can make the world feel, for a better word, alive.
Yeah.
And it's.
I think a lot of people forget that the default for, especially the lower undead skeleton zombies, is if they're not under orders, they default to the behaviours
Yeah,
that they had in life.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've been playing with that Keith Baker, especially when talking about Eberron, has written a lot about. In terms of one of the flavour things for Eberron is just how creepy the undead are. Because they're meant to be, especially at their end, they're meant to be mindless. The spirit, the soul has moved on. They're not animated by their old selves, and yet sometimes, like that returning to old things, there's hints of the old life shine through. And there's an example used of things like, I mean, I've done it in terms of this kind of this hint of there being a hive mind, of there being something else in the darkness, of sometimes sort of, of the skeletal guards just turning to watch, go by. But one example, for example, that Keith Baker did in, I think it's in one of the Eberron books. Actually, no, it was a PDF he did on Eberron lore, and he talks about an example of a night watchman who his old sergeant has been raised and sort of is sort of still working the night shift, so to speak. He's just there, and he knows there's no trace of there's no recognition, there's nothing that goes on. But then just every now and then on a quiet night, he'll just hear a little fraction of a whistled tune from the zombie, from when they used to be on patrol together.
Which is beautiful beautiful world building.
Yeah. And that's really kind of inspired a lot of the Ilmarrow stuff.
Yeah.
But really kind of, because I only really read it relatively recently, and it kind of really just sort of kind of focused how to use that background uneasiness and bring it forward to then fuel, so that you were then starting to make up your own bits about it, and that was what I knew I'd got you.
Yeah, that whole I've tried to read quite a lot of Eberron background stuff. To be fair, my homebrew world takes a lot of inspiration from Eberron.
Yeah.
Because I like the whole crystal punk idea, and like the fact that there is steampunk ideas, but without that highly militaristic feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
the Magitech.
And I love
the Venetian style houses.
Yeah, and like it's that world building that. Sorry, I've got something in my eye. That is done, and a lot of the stuff around Eberron is very much about old lore, stuff that happened during the war, before the war, or even hundreds of thousands of years ago that doesn't technically shouldn't affect the world we live in now, or the world they live in now, but
actually some of the beings and individuals that were doing that are still around.
Yeah, they're still doing their machinations. They're still you've got this whole like worlds that connect via like how close they are to each other.
The moons. And I love that idea.
It's such a great way of storytelling, and you can and the fact that you can use those phases of the moons and different planes of existence to craft the story how you want it, and that's what I like with the whole Fey realm stuff, and the fact that it is another plane of existence or another moon, whatever you want to call it, that
both
passes every year, and that's when the walls are finished. That's when all the attacks are happening, and it's that whole storytelling thing that I love. Like, I like the homebrew world that I'm running doesn't work like that, but it works that almost like the Violet Citadel. So there are gateways to other worlds.
Right. Okay.
So and you can
sort of the concept of sigil as well.
Yeah, and you can accidentally stumble through some of those doorways that may not be seen to the naked eye.
Yeah. Oh, Radiant Citadel.
Radiant, not
If
Violet.
if you're
Radiant,
talking
that's
D&D, Radiant, but also Sigil, City of Doors.
Yeah, Radiant, that's the one. And it's that whole, even though you might not be able to see a doorway, it's probably still there. And a couple of
But
times,
you haven't got the right trigger.
yeah, or a couple of times I've had them walk through it without realizing, and suddenly they're surrounded by lava or a dreamscape or a dreamscape that shouldn't technically exist.
Yes.
And that,
How am I inside Kerner's dreams? What's going on?
yeah, and it's that whole sort of,
They being John Malkovich.
yeah, and like the previous campaign that all fell to shit, that one, the turning point was meant to be a dreamscape where they would go up against their self, like the worst parts of themselves, to then see where they'd gone wrong, to sort of mould them into the heroes they were going to be, sort of thing.
Okay, yeah.
Like, very much sort of pushing them down that hero forming road, all the rest of it. And it was, I think, conceptually it was too much for a lot of people, or some people. I think it was.
It's ambitious.
I think some of them didn't want to think about possibly some of the bad things they've done in the game so far, and that sort of. It was was ambitious.
It's a very mature story direction.
Yeah, and I don't think they were ready for it.
And not everyone's in the headspace.
No, and they weren't ready for it.
It could be unsafe for them to do it as well.
And that's the thing. They weren't ready for it, and that's where it all sort of just fell apart. And look, looking back on it, I can see that yes, I did things wrong. Possibly the reactions of other people weren't that wholesome, but it was that whole sort of, I probably could have padded it better, but it was an idea that didn't necessarily work. Okay. So, but it's looking back on it with eyes later on, knowing that you could have done things different.
Yeah.
So,
I think we all do that. Let's be fair. We all look at stuff, whether it's worked or not. And there's always could have done it slightly different, or it could have been smoother, or this, that, and the other. And one of the things I occasionally forget, but I'm always very grateful for, is how people mentally paper over the cracks. They'll fill in bits for themselves, and so for me at my end, it can feel this is a bit of a crunch to take it there, but actually you guys come up with stuff and fill the gap. It's okay, we'll go with that, that's fine. Another great NPC which has had actually a really fundamental impact on the direction of the game, not just of the Sunday but also the other one I run, the Auntie in the Fields.
Auntie in the Fields. She definitely made an impact there.
Oh yeah, because not only have they been sort of this kind of this ongoing, very ambivalent figure. And don't get me wrong, they are totally evil. But also, they do own and look after and have a possessiveness. And in the other campaign, they are grooming a replacement. And so the focus of that campaign, that set of stories, is around choice and stories and where they go
and how that.
And it's a much more, on the one hand, much more sort of close storytelling, and it's much more narrative.
Yeah.
Largely because I'm usually in a pub with a set of dice at the time. But what I've been really grateful for the figure of Auntie in the Fields, Deadeye Alice,
yeah,
has been that not only is she a link between the campaigns in terms of a consistent and an advisor sometimes on both sides, but has also been a catalyst for, I said, that the world moving on,
Yeah.
the living world aspect. And again, we had another example of it with Tanglefingers saying, and no one's seen the auntie in the fields for quite some time now. Because I've been wanting to make certain that neither story, although both in the same space and both orbiting around the big story there,
Yeah.
that neither is orbiting the other. You're orbiting the main story, but you're not orbiting each other.
Yeah.
So while you are technically all NPCs in each other's stories, there's not one that you're doing to complete the story of another.
Yeah. So it like we're not going to be halfway through something and then
my having to say, and now you need to wait till I've done the other session over here,
yeah.
or anything like that, and also and vice versa, and had a lot of, you know, and there's been a lot of work taken in that place, and a big part of it has been she's been a great NPC for getting players and characters to challenge their expectations. And again, we're back into that talking very, very kindly and very sort of very, very solicitous conversation, and offering these options, and just every now and then just a little ride dig, or a little suggestion to do something just a little bit inappropriate, maybe a little bit, and it's all in just this little bit of a push, and, my sweet little boy, yes, I remember him so well. He did so many things for me, and that's been a great way of showing that insidious evil of how people make a little choice, another little choice, and another little choice.
How evil is
And
it?
sometimes,
Being evil isn't always a straightforward choice.
no, and sometimes you're making choices that from the outside look evil, but actually aren't, because you don't have all the context. And vice versa. Good actions and good consequences that down the line you're thinking, was that right? And especially in the other campaign, that's so much more front and center, and there are so many conversations around, I thought she was good, and then I thought she was bad, and then just when I thought, then she's done this, and now I'm not sure, and I'm really confused, and I need to make a decision for myself on what I'm going to do, and maybe I'm going to accept that thing, but maybe I'm going to go there, and it's been that sort of building the trust of knowing the agency that could carry through, and saying, and recognizing that it's not a traditional adventure.
Yeah.
That it's something that is uniquely its own, but it is still in the same universe, and is still valid, and is also having consequences knocking on. And hence Tanglefingers giving this description of what Faye's been up to, and sort of the household that's been built, and some of it, yes, is coming through in the lore drop stuff that I do, telling from these other perspectives of other people who've been encountering what's going on. And on that one occasion, there being a story where Deadeye Alice directly addresses the reader, which made for some amazing roleplay in the next session, because suddenly it was very much a case of, oh no, am I metagaming, or am I not metagaming, or oh, now do I let her know that I'm recognizing that she's spoken to me, the player, rather than to the character? And yeah, that was great fun. Let's keep stirring that a little bit more and see where we go with it. But also at the same time, then coming into the Sunday game, having that link from the auntie to the old knight, and the conflict with Winter's Night as being a very solid motive for why this evil legendary creature is aiding you.
Yeah.
It's purely selfish.
Oh god, yeah.
Purely selfish. And yet, and I love playing with. I love playing with characters where all the shades are grey,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not quite so aware. And there's bits of I know what her game plan is. I know what her end game is.
Yeah.
And it may or may not take place on screen.
It could be off
Like it would-
off
yeah.
screen. It
It
could
could
be
be
an
tough.
epilogue. It could be
Yeah, it could well be, and yeah, same as for that big green dragon that keeps crossing your path and being involved, because that's another thing that started off as a throwaway. Here's a monster to avoid, and has then kept coming up and kept coming up and kept coming up, and that's a good example of a retcon.
Mm-hmm.
Where the link to the Winter's Night and the Hags started off as incidental, and then
now
as we've got
it's-
more into the Draconic prophecies and those links out from that.
And that's another thing that I love is the whole thing with leaning into the Draconic prophecies that you've had is so good. It's
I really enjoy it.
yeah. If just so people know, if you do want to read, you can follow the links just below. Tim's blog is on there. Go and read a lot of the lore drops. There's a lot of like life stuff in there as well, and go and read the lore drops that Tim does for D&D, and even some of the recaps. Because
Yeah, there's session recaps, the lore drops, and yes, if you search under lore drops, search under Draconic prophecies.
all of that stuff is there, and Tim being Tim is an amazing writer. Especially when it comes to the lore drops and the character building of things that are that you might not necessarily see on stream, and it's stuff that we will read between streams, or we will, Tim will go, "Oh, go and read this because there's a lore drop." It's nice just to go in, read something that might not necessarily happen in game, but then it happening in the background.
And I think that's the thing, because sometimes it's reactions and aftermath stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's people's observations.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just kind of that wider filling out the background, and it doesn't directly affect what you're doing, but knowing it adds some weight and impact to what you've just done, or what might be coming up, and that's what I really like. Is actually sometimes just gives me a great opportunity to explore what's just off the focus. It's like there's one of them where it's from the point of view of a guard in the street when you guys caused a riot so that you could then sneak in to the evil cultists, and I think it ends with something along the lines of, and then someone threw a shoe.
Who throws a shoe?
Which was what I can't remember who it was, but it was what one of you did to start the fight.
Yeah.
So
And it's
so I have fun with it,
Yeah, it's all of that extra little lore drops, and that's the only difference between this campaign. That's one of the big differences between this campaign and the other campaign is a lot of the lore that is going on in the other game is all being put into that Discord server, so that I can slowly build the world, so that I can eventually do almost like a wiki page that then people can check and have a look, and I think that's something that we should do, or like next game that we next adventure game, whatever we do next time, is have a wiki page that we can keep track of, that we can put.
I've tried manually doing it on my, and I don't have the time.
No, it's
there are maps, there are characters, there are things. There are no.
It's at the moment, like, we're too far into this campaign to even start anything like that. Yeah. The most we can do is rely on notes that we've done.
Yep.
And some of those aren't always accurate.
No. Sometimes the wrong end of various sticks are grabbed.
And it's it's that whole sort of keeping track of things. Like, I like the way Moon keeps keeps their notes in character.
In character. Yeah.
And I like that. And I've started doing that with Valenia as well. Mainly for the whole reason of it fits better with keeping track of notes. Because rather than the DM has dropped this piece of information for this character, everybody knows it, let's metagame. It's this is meant for Kerner. Nobody else knows this. So I'm not writing that down.
Yeah.
And it's that it might be a massive plot hook, but if Valenia doesn't know it,
can't make notes about it.
I can't.
And then you got the other extreme where people are noting down what the Volta hit and what the damage was, and thinking, but you've literally got a log on the website of all that stuff. So you're going in too granular on your detail there. But that's the style that works for them.
Yeah, and that's the thing. That's what. If that's what works for you, that's what works for you. It's different. Different people do things differently. As a DM, I literally write down plot hooks, a random character that somehow managed to become a fucking main character because they've gone somewhere and gone, what's this person's name? And I've gone, I don't fucking know.
Yeah.
Write stuff down.
Most of this book is either my musing trying to work out how to get out of the next bit of the plot hook, or noting of random details. Like I've got one early here where my notes on the layout of the new town versus the old town is basically that page that I drew in real time,
which
during the session,
which works. And if that's what works for you, and thing is, that is very much an old school D&D way of doing stuff.
Yeah.
And I do it, you do it. Hey Vera, it's that whole. It's that old school way of like. When you didn't have maps on a screen, when it was all theatre of the mind, so you're jotting down the layout of a of a town, of a, etc., like dungeon.
Yeah. Well, it's like I did one thing, theatre of the mind, but was sketching out a map of a set of mines, and then once I'd done the session, then it kind of turned into one of my weird and wonderful drawings, like that.
Yeah, that's the. I love how your drawings just evolve.
It was great fun doing that. And then the next page is, I think the Draconic Prophecy stuff that I never actually brought into your game, but it was more relevant to the other game.
Yeah.
So
it's
all stuff like that.
Yeah.
My notebook is absolutely invaluable, but not necessarily in the way that people expect it to. Because if you think I've got everything written out for what's happening with the campaign,
no, I don't think I don't know a single single DM that writes everything out.
No,
because if you wrote everything out, you would end up. You don't get frustrated that
something's gone wrong.
Something's gone wrong.
Yeah, it's being able to. Yeah, being able to allow people to actually enjoy and have agency. I keep using the word, and it's entirely accurate. I think it's the big leap people make from going when they're using pre-made modules to then running their own campaigns and having literally the guts to actually embrace that fear.
That going off script, not worrying. Just like we said earlier, having that beginning, middle, and end, and hoping they stay somewhere on that, and having the ability to change things as it happens.
Yeah, being able to let go of the story sometimes because actually something better has evolved out. Yeah.
54 Elder Trans, which sounds really eldritch. It really does. Yeah, it's you're never 54, Max. Auntie Max is never 54.
Wow.
Jesus.
Well done.
You don't look it. And it's that whole.
I'm merely level 52 queer, so Just...
Yeah, I'm still a Padawan in my years apparently. What was I gonna say? It's that. I think it's a difference between being able to improvise what you want to do next, or being able to improvise in case things do go off and don't happen the way things work. Like, I started a year. Oh God, what was it? Must be nearly 10 years ago. Whenever Mines of Phandelver was released.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago, I think.
I started basically a beginner's campaign for a group of people, and it very quickly went from being a Mines of Phandelver quest to being sort of a Mines of Phandelver. It was like one of those things that I sort of added it as things happened. I sort of added in the NPCs so that they were there, so that the plot points were there, and it was like, we're at least going to get to where we need to.
Yeah, it's very similar. I think one of the first, the first campaign I ran that was not based off a module, because I completed a whole. Twice, dear God, think about it. I took 2 sets of people through Temple of Elemental Evil, against the Slavers, against the Giants, Queen of the Drow, Loth. I took 2 sets of players through that, and after that started. Then I felt I've got to try something different, and actually made something whole cloth.
Yeah,
I'd set it in. I'd set it in the Red Steel campaign.
Okay.
Campaign world, which is part of Mistara and the basic D&D world, but this is playing it with second edition AD&D.
Yeah.
And it was the first one I've done where it was I actually do quite a lot now, where they were adventurers who were set out originally to clear these mines that had been overrun with undead. That was the basic hook. And they did there, and they found their sort of the old mining town, the ruins of it was there, and sort of a tower that was stable enough that they could use that as a home base and then start to build out. Which they cleared the mine, and then sort of miners started to arrive, and suddenly it turned into, they were now appointed to basically be the security for the mine and the village, and to be responsible basically as lords of the manor.
Yeah.
And so it turned from dealing with that to kind of monster of the week could be things like infestations of fire rats in the ovens.
Yeah.
Clearing those out. There was a mysterious stranger who kept on turning up, stinking to high heaven, who was just utterly random. But as they were exploring more, and they found kind of dungeons below the tower, and they'd sort of be breaking various seals and managing to retrieve various things, he started to become a little bit more coherent and a little bit more and they eventually worked out that actually this stinking old man was a lich who, this was his tower, he'd been running the place, and as they were breaking all these various seals that had been put in place to fragment his mind and his powers, that they were basically restoring him, and there was that. So they were on the one hand being drawn in by the treasures below, and also things like merchants getting attacked on the trails. So going out and dealing with with bandits or treating with local tribes, and then sort of finding out that there was an invading force of orcs coming from the north, and all these things going on. And it was the first one really where it was a case of their agency took front of play.
Yeah,
and I would throw events taking place, and it was the first kind of living world type game that I'd run.
Yeah,
huge fun, and I've got various iterations of the maps from over the about 3-4 years I did, and various iterations of the map as it started off from just these ruins, and then a few more houses were put in, and then we built a few more houses and shops and various tradesmen and artisans moved in and stuff like that. And I didn't really, other than this mystery of the lich and the dungeons below, didn't really have a story. didn't really have a plan.
It
It's
just
just a case of let's see what happens. And then eventually the story, became about repelling this orc invasion.
yeah.
And that was where the immortal battle cry of "release the chickens," sorry, of detonate the chickens came from. Because that was a thing where one of the players was a fledgling necromancer, and he'd been practicing because he hadn't quite got the full strength animate dead to animate it, but he had a low level version, almost cantrip, not quite cantrip level, where he could animate animals. And so every time they had a chicken dinner, he'd grab the carcass and animate it, and they'd be pecking around outside his house. These undead chickens.
Oh no!
Skeletal chickens, just pecking the dust, this, that, and the other, and just behaving as they had in life.
Yeah.
So he wasn't trying to control them. Just. So when they heard that, when they worked out where the kind of the choke point where this orc army was going to be, they worked out that they were heading for the mine because it was a source of the rare cinnabar that could be used to make explosives. In this campaign setting, it was the essential element. They rallied the locals. They managed to get some earthworks constructed to sort of channel things in, and as part of that, they kind of dug this pit and filled it with undead chickens that they had packed with explosives and nails and everything else, and buried them just under the surface.
Oh Jesus!
So we had a necromancer, and he could do that. He could make that happen. The other player, the other wizard, was a pyromancer.
Oh God! See, that's how you know you're going back, because you got pyromancers.
And so we reached this point where the army started to sweep in, and they came across the killing field, and the immortal cry of "detonate the chickens" went up. So suddenly the orcs found the ground underneath them bubbling and shifting as 30, 40 undead chickens burrowed out from under the ground, under their foot.
Brilliant.
And the pyromancer sent a flaming sphere right into the middle.
Brilliant.
So effectively, a very large fireball over a very large space.
And so KFC was invented.
And it was a wonderful, and because they put all the effort in for the preparation, it was one of those. Yeah, I'm allowing this. It's not. It's very situational. And it's that sort of, as you said, the kind of the movie moment.
That's
And it literally was just a large chunk of this invading army just blown to smithereens, and suddenly, yes, there's chicken bones everywhere, fragments of nail, lacerated remains of orcs falling out of the trees because it was in the middle of a forest. I mean, so think of that scene in Guardians of the Galaxy 2 where you see sort of various mercenaries appearing up on the trees and falling down the side. Yeah, so it's like all of them up in the air, and then it's raining blood and guts.
Which is just brilliant. It's like one of the things I did in an Inquisitor campaign. I think I've told you this story before about a problematic player who would literally, because Inquisitor wasn't just about the combat, it was about the investigation, it was about subterfuge, it was about all the other bits and pieces, and this character just kept running into places, shooting everything up and murdering everybody. And they came across a Mechanicum forge that was making cybernetics and robotics for the AdMech and the Imperial Guard as they were at the time.
Yeah.
So we were talking. And I said, look, it's this huge imposing thing. 2 double doors at the front, at the top of the ramp. Bit of marshland out the front. And you can see that there are sewage outlets and stuff. So, giving the hints that there are other ways in.
Yeah.
I said, and you can see that there are automated turrets. That there are autocannons, all trained on anybody trying to attack.
Hmm.
And this guy goes, I'm going to run up the middle, plant my Imperial seal in the floor, and say, Inquisition, open up.
And to be fair, there are many inquisitors who would take that approach.
If it hadn't been for the previous murder hoboedness, I would have gone, okay. And I remember going, no answer.
Mm-hmm.
So the only response is that the turrets seem to train on you.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, I'm going to walk towards the doors.
Mm-hmm. I can see the logic.
And he pulls out his mighty chain axe that has a flaming track on it.
Mm-hmm.
Plants it into the door and starts going for it.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay. And I described it as being like almost like an overpowering. Imagine Sheldon knocking constantly, but with a chainsaw.
Yeah.
It was that sort of. Like I said, it's like a repeated rat-a-tat-tat on the door as the chainsaw tries to cut through. I said, this goes on for about 30 seconds. I said, at which point the doors swing open.
Mm-hmm.
And to one side you see a dishevelled tech priest with his staff, his eyes glowing red, his hood, all the normal sort of...
Yeah.
I said, and beside him is a mutated Ogryn,
Mm-hmm.
who appears to have had his lower half and his right half replaced.
With a tank.
with tank tracks and a Vulcan cannon.
So you're going gently.
And watching this guy's face go... just drop. And I went, what is your armour? And obviously, the Inquisitor is out of 100. And he goes, it's... it was something like 74, 75, because he was wearing powered flak armour.
Oh, flake. Yeah.
And I was like, okay. So, but the way armour works in Inquisitor is armour blocks the first X amount of damage. Anything over that is the damage you take.
Yeah.
He blocked the first 75 of 900.
Oh dear.
As this
Those kooky Admech fitting Titan weapons to serve it.
As this Vulcan cannon just wound up, I gave him a chance to avoid it. I said you can roll a dexterity, so you can was it agility, reflex? I think it's a reflex save.
Okay, yeah.
And he rolled way below, and I just said this character is just bounced down this ramp as each thing just hits him. I think in total it basically equaled like somewhere in the tens of thousands of damage, and his character just ended up as this bloody pulp.
Sort of like us when things go horribly wrong in Destiny, and as Max just said, walk it off.
And the funny thing was, afterwards, the tech priest walked down, grabbed the body, and took it in, and turned him into a servitor.
Of course.
Because at the time, the thing is, at the time, the other two players, because we were doing free player and me as a DM.
Yeah.
The other two players are down the side of this ramp, ready to go in, like into these other entrances, and it was just like, don't be a dick. Just don't be.
Mission successfully failed. He has been the distraction, and
and it was that whole. You've been warned numerous times. The only reason you haven't been in prison is because you've presented your inquisitorial seal every time.
yeah.
And it's just that whole, this wasn't gonna.
No.
Like the Mechanicum respect you. They do not obey you.
Yeah, they'll pay attention, and sometimes that's not what you want. I mean, that's up there with in terms of famous deaths. Playing a cat, DMing again, forever DM. a character who'd been playing a halfling thief, who had famously uttered the words, "With my constitution against this poison, I can only fail if I roll a 1." Well, you can tell what happened. Yeah, as the lockpick. He would, yeah, anyway, that took him down. So they didn't have a raised dead or resurrection, but they had a reincarnation spell handy.
Okay.
So anyway, so he came back as this kind of dwarf centaur type thing.
like a Shetland pony centaur.
Yeah. And this was very much you could see the I don't want to play this character anymore. So right in the heart, the main body of the upper temple of the Temple of Elemental Evil was this thing where you have a daze with the phone on.
Yeah.
And you could trigger it in such a way that the phone then descended down into Luctamoy's lair. Which he did. He jumped on and this and the other, and down he went. And anyway, I drew the curtains closed on that one because it wasn't pretty. They did get attacked by his fungoid remains later, but
Max saying stupid deaths.
Yeah.
Is I think the funniest one is Vac Bedman, Ben, the conspiracy theorist.
Oh yeah.
He was in one of my games, with Stu and a couple of others, and they were a good party. Ben, being Ben, was doing his normal. I want to try something really dumb. So it starts off with he goes. So he's playing. He was I think he was a Dragonborn paladin.
Okay.
I think, if I remember rightly. And yes, Logan was there. Oh God, because it was during karaoke. So he went in and he goes. I would like to sneak up behind the bugbear because they're only like level 3. I'd like to sneak up behind the bugbear, stick my fingers down his trousers, run my finger along his crack, and then stick my finger under his nose.
Okay.
Whilst wearing plate armor, don't forget.
Clank. Right, yeah.
So
that's Bastion of Stealth.
So I go, right, okay, we'll do stealth and dexterity rolls, etc. Proceeds to roll a group of nat 20s.
There's always one.
And I'm like, oh fuck, right, okay, right, let's play this. As he goes to stick the finger under his nose, he rolls a 5.
Perfect timing.
At which point I make him make a strength check. For being grappled.
Yep, fair.
At which point, let's just say we created the scene of Loki and Hulk. With him being smashed either way. Once either way each turn.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
And it resulted in the warlock and the rogue, I think it was. It was the rogue. Throwing healing potions at him to try and keep him alive.
I've got 2 giant related stupid deaths. Both very similar theme. Both involve people. So the first one, this is during the Giants campaign. So Steading of the Hill Giants, I think it was.
Cool. Yeah, that is an old.
Yeah. I've still got it on my shelf. I've still got the original on my shelf there. And they were making their way up a snowy pathway to up to where the steading was, and they encountered a guard, and there were, I think there were white puddings or something as sort of an amorphous extra threat that were lurking in the area. Oh no, they were down below at the bottom. They're sort of halfway up the cliff, and these things were down below. They'd circumvented them earlier.
Yeah.
And they just get to the top, and this guy just walks straight out in front of a hill giant guard who is sort of he's literally just finished sort of picking a whole chicken off the fire and sort of thing, with all the usual finesse you'd expect. Chomp. This guy comes up, and the giant looks at him, and he looks at the giant, and he pulls his sword, and the giant looks at him, grapples, picks him up, and throws him off the cliff. So, he falls, best part of, I think it was something about 80, 90 foot.
That's a lot of damage.
So he's taken down from being slapped, then the grapple, then the throw.
Yeah.
He bounces off the other side of the crevasse, so it's a valley. So it bounces off the wall. So he takes throwing, falling damage.
Yeah.
Then he falls the 80 foot. He's down and on 0, and we were doing the -10 rule.
Yeah.
You'll never guess what he landed next to.
All of the puddings.
The 2 white puddings, which then rolled over in Minetti.
It's as Logan said. Logan was there when he tried to climb out of the dungeon and landed on his back. Yeah. So these are people that never played D&D before. So
okay. Yeah.
So it was basically this is the Cragmore, one of the Fandelver games that I was running.
Okay. Yeah.
Wasn't using the pre-gens. They'd been playing a dungeon crawler type game, and I basically moved them across. I'd been introducing D&D mechanics slowly, so that they could get used to it. And then I went, right, now here's D&D.
Yeah. You've done the tutorial.
Yeah. So basically, they're in I think it's the Cragmore hideout.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's like a goblin cave.
Okay. Yeah.
And Ben so don't forget Ben's playing a paladin,
Mm-hmm.
full plate armor, etc., etc. I would like to jump on these wolves, springboard off of the wolves, and then climb up to the next ledge.
Okay.
Also
a next ledge to jump to?
There was.
Okay.
And I'm like, right, okay. I'm already rubbing my temples by this point. And I'm like, right, okay. So he rolls, manages to pretty much surf on a wolf.
Okay.
Because he was rolling really well. Goes to jump, lands on his back, and then just gets ravaged by these wolves.
Oh dear.
And I'm just like I would purposely let them do dumb shit. Because
so the part 2 to the person who'd been thrown off the cliff, bounced, been eaten. Remember, this is early AD&D. So his backup character, or his next character, was found as a prisoner within the setting, and was a halfling thief. I'm spotting a thief.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he agreed to join them, and he went to sort of start to scout ahead. So everyone sort of hangs back a bit because they can hear. There's a big room up ahead. The doors are slightly ajar. They can hear conversations. He goes, I'm going to peer around the door. And so he peers in, and there's 2 giants. There's the hill giant chieftain, and an envoy from another clan. I can't remember if it's a fire giant or something that was also there as well. So he goes, well, I'm going to climb up above the door. Okay, yep, fair enough. Did the rolls. Hanging up there. And he's just kind of hanging up there, hiding in the shadows up there. So far, so actually quite sensible.
Yep.
and the conversation comes to an end, and the fire giant walks out of another door, leaving the hill giant chieftain on his own. And so he goes, right, coast is clear, he's on his own, I'm going for it. I'm going to drop off the ceiling and backstab him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right, fair enough. Now you've got to remember, obviously this is first edition AD&D, or second edition, we
Yeah.
bootstrapped it a bit. But backstabs in early edition Dungeons and Dragons were a lot more powerful.
Uh-huh.
But certainly, especially at level, it wasn't just double damage, it was triple damage.
Yeah.
And things like that. So he basically gets his short sword and basically uses it like a pogo stick to sort of just try and come down
Yeah.
on this guy's back. You can see the logic.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the logic. And he hit and proceeded to roll ones.
Yep.
So we're all outside. I mean, obviously we could hear what the player's saying, but we can't observe what's going on. So all we see, as we are out in the corridor. Yes, no, I was actually playing this. I wasn't DMing it. I was playing it. I think that's why it's stuck. Is we hear a "Zai!" Oh, and next thing we know, the doors burst open as the halfling is thrown like a rock through the door. So he takes damage from hitting the door.
Yeah.
The corridor's 40 foot wide, so he takes another 40 foot falling damage to hit the far wall.
Uh-huh.
And because it's been at head height for a giant, that's another 20 foot. So then drops. He's still alive. We roll initiative. Hill Giant Chieftain goes first, comes running out and drop kicks him effectively. It was basically did it.
Yeah.
Basically, he did his primary attack, but it was reskinned as drop kicks him.
Oh.
Enough to kill him. So the DM ruled that actually what he did wasn't just he just killed him by stepping on him or this, that, and the other. No, he drop kicked him through the window, over the cliff, bouncing off the wall, falling all the way down. Because further up now, that's nearly 200 foot.
Oh no.
And then the white pudding's at him.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Yeet.
Purely on the basis of you're already dead. Now we're just going to make it funny.
Yeah, it's a yeet. It's stupid deaths are great, and it's one of those things that I don't think you can write stupid deaths if you try.
I think the nearest the DDC have managed is just the ongoing silliness of Kerner and the Death Ward.
Oh god, yeah. That
Which started off as, oh, Kerner's dead again, right, we need to do something about it, but we mustn't tell them about it. And so Arwen do this whole thing of just casually reaching out and casting the spell, and it was just a great roleplay thing of Kerner getting very confused by why they were being felt up by a halfling cleric, and especially once they were getting serious with
Kakana.
It was that sort of, excuse me, I mean I'm flattered, but you're really not my type, and
it was the fact that everybody else knew what was going on.
Yeah,
but it was just so well. It was just like the, aha.
Yep.
Or
and it's like anything if you tell it 3 times, because any joke told 3 times gets progressively funnier.
Yeah.
And it was that same principle.
And it was it was just that whole thing that stuck, and it's it was. I think as it is 9 o'clock. Casanunda.
Yeah.
I think we've done what 3 hours, just about. Just
3 hours.
Just gone 3 hours.
That's it, didn't we?
This is the thing. Get 2 DMs talking.
Yeah.
And
that's it. We've lost track of.
We've lost track. Yes.
Put it this way. I've not even got to the bit where I was talking about using the tarot deck to make up scenarios in real time.
Well, we could probably do that later in the week. 'Cause,
maybe another session. Yeah.
I think people just like listening to us two talk because
Because we're nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be a game Tuesday because I think obviously Moon's in Spain still. It's rude, I know.
Yeah.
There's probably going to be some baby shenanigans or Ganesh shenanigans. I love the fact that that's become a thing. Just Ganesh shenanigans. But yeah.
D&D next. When's Moon back?
Saturday, I believe.
Okay. They shouldn't be. Well, it's Spain. They shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be jet lag. It's only an hour.
Yeah, but then, yeah, we'll see if they're available. That'd be lovely to get back into the game. If they're delayed, unpacking, whatever, then we'll take the mickey out of them. Yeah.
We could always do a introduction to the 2024 handbook or something, or
yeah, could talk some more about that. I haven't had a chance to do a proper read.
yeah, it'll give us a chance to have a proper read. We haven't had a chance. Like we'll say the 2024 players handbook is pretty good from what we've read so far.
Especially the character creation in particular.
Like we said, the character creation
and explanation of the rules is good.
It's very straightforward, and the fact that there's better in-depth descriptions of feats and stuff as well.
I'll tell you my favourite thing of character creation.
Go on.
You get 3 languages. You get common, and then you can pick 2 others.
You're going to say about
Common sign language.
Common sign language, and I've taken it for Valenia on that other sheet because that
that's how you do inclusion.
That to me was the best inclusion, and to be fair, if I was playing a character that did sign language, if I needed to use it for a character or for an interaction, I would do my best to learn what I could.
You can also talk about it in terms of it being, say, for a military background, military hand signs and things like that. So it's actually really quite nuanced in terms of where it's coming from. But I like the whole concept that common in the 2024 rules as a concept comes from sigil.
Yeah.
Right at the heart, and it's a way for everyone to be able to talk together.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's a nice bit of deep lore that for people who don't, unless they've read further into it, won't know what on earth that means. But actually, in terms of tying together the wider universe, it was nice to see kind of some old school elemental plane layouts as opposed to the orange stuff that I've been doing forever.
It's that whole thing of the new rulebook. When they say common, they don't mean English. They mean it's a common denominational language that people use. So there's a certain script that is written in signage so people know where they are. There's certain ways of people speaking so that they know what's going on.
And which, being fair, was actually how it was described all the way back in first edition. So actually, no, in basic. Yeah. It was a trader's language, and that's which obviously mirrors real world development of language.
Yeah, and that's the best thing. It feels so far it feels more organic, and I like the fact that they've done away with half races, and you more closely resemble the race that you. Or you take the traits of the close that you take after. Right? So if you're a half orc, you take traits of an orc, or if you are a half orc with say an elven mother, you could take the elven traits.
Yeah, it's flavour. It's fluff rather than crunch.
Yeah, and that to me feels a lot nicer and a lot more organic, and the way it's done, and
gives you more options.
And backgrounds seem to be streamlined a bit better as well. And I've noticed that, especially doing Valenia earlier, the Ranger feels more rangery. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's a lot less it's
The weapon mastery I quite like
Yeah.
as well, because I was just looking at that in terms of you have the mastery with the bow as is part of what you built up.
yeah,
So you have a thing where you can choose to apply disadvantage to people
which
running away from you.
I love that.
Yeah.
You know,
So there's some nice control options.
the way I've read it is that a basic hunter, ranger, bowmaster, whatever you want to, is very much a support class more than anything else. Because they've got a lot of minor healing abilities. They don't have they do have greater restoration, but not until like level 15. It's like all these it's all minor abilities that are more aimed at either hindering the enemies or helping out a cleric that can a bit more.
It's encouraging people to be more creative in using utility, I think, and that's never a bad thing.
And I think if anything, Ranger will probably be. I think they finally fixed Ranger the way it needed to be fixed. I want to see what they're going to do with Beast Mastery, because that's still not there yet. But the way it was described is they're going to be having pets at level with you.
Okay, makes sense.
Which would make sense, and I think that really would add a lot of flavour too. Because one of the things I hated doing was leaving Rain at home, because obviously she was supposed to be Valenia's hunting partner, etc., etc. And technically, I could still take her out.
Yeah,
but she wouldn't be any good in combat. She would literally be there as a
you could be there to sort of give assist with
assisting,
and which I think is kind of what some of the original thought behind that was going anyway.
Yeah.
It's sort of level as a touch combat, but really shows you more about the companion and assistant and everything else like that. Sort of like a more detailed familiar.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be nice to see where that goes. I want to have a look at things like Warlock, because there's been a few people have gone, I'm not sure what they've done, like what they've done with Warlocks. I want to have a look at that.
I want to go playing around and just making it some random cat.
I think that's what I'm going to try and do.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of just getting my hands on the mechanics and seeing what I can, see how I can break it.
Oh, definitely. But it's that whole sort of seeing what is new and having a proper read of stuff. I think is going to be nice. But apart from that,
we've done it again. We've started talking.
Started talking again. Yeah. Right. So, if the game doesn't happen on next Sunday, we could always do another thing like this. And by the time we probably had a chance to go over the player's handbook, all the rest of it. Please, either buy from Roll20. I'd say, if you can, buy from Roll20. D&D, I've got this thing against Hasbro at the moment. Don't get me started on that. But we'll go into that another time. This will be up on the YouTube probably later, by the time I've uploaded it. Just because we like to keep track of stuff, it gives people a chance to watch something different. Which all those are under the links, all the rest of it, but that I will share again in case people have missed it. Go and have a look. Go and have a look at all our stuff. Most of us have navigated away from Twitter now. We're now on Threads or Blue Sky. Threads tends to be sticking a bit better at the moment. It feels a bit nicer. But apart from that, thank you, Tim. It's been brilliant. I've
always love these
3.5 hours, and we've barely even scratched the surface of what being a DM is about. Obviously there's no moon this week. I might do a couple of extra streams this week, depending on how I feel. See, because boredom, stuff, talking to people, etc., etc. So on that note, thank you, Tim. It's been great. You can throw something at Morgan now, if he's awake.
He's awake. He's playing. He's continuing on the PCG game.
I was going to say he's probably still playing that.
there's suddenly an innocent looking face, or an attempt at an innocent looking face of no, I'm not honest, but I can see in the reflection in his glasses of exactly what he's doing.
Yeah. Lunar eclipse. When's? I thought that was last
Is that
week.
next week?
I thought it was last week. Might be next
No,
week.
we had...
No moon this
Oh.
week. Oh. Well done.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
you can tell we've been streaming for 3.5 hours. On that note, I think that is the best way to
Well
finish
done,
this.
Max. Well done, Max.
Well done. And once again, happy birthday, Max.
Yes.
And we will see you later. Take your meds, stay hydrated, and get some sleep. From all of us here at the DDC, the night.
See y'all.